Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Fluvanna County, Friday, January 24th, Fluvanna County School Board Seminar, FY 26 Budget Preparation. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Here.
Mr. Key,
Here.
Mr. One, Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Rittenhouse.
Here.
All right, can everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence? Mr. Reed, can you lead us, please? Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Right, on to the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda, or would you like to keep it as is?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, I have a motion, to have a second.
I'll second.
All right, thanks. For a second, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have adoption of the agenda. All right, on to public comments. We come to the time in our meeting for public comments. I remind everyone that by policy, only members of the community, meaning residents of Fluvanna and staff of Fluvanna County Public Schools, may address the board unless you are legal counsel representing a group interest in today's proceeding. We welcome all community members who are here to get information or opinions. We'll ask you come to the podium, tell us your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll start with any names on the sign-up sheet. We'll welcome your input if you sign up during the public comments. The board will not interact with you, but we will listen and appreciate your time. Is there anybody for public comments? All right. Seeing that nobody's here for public comments, we'll close that section. All right, on to reports.
Okay, Mr. Key, members of the board, good morning. We have a lot of material for this morning. So let me just tell you what's there, and then we'll begin our conversation. There's a PDF document that details some of the support positions that were referenced last month. Mr. Reed in particular that you mentioned. Let's get a high level view of what we think would be ideal, where we are. And so this kind of documents that. That's also included in a PDF slide deck called organizational structure. That's actually what we're start with. You don't have to go there yet, but that includes that as well as some of the structural organizational components that we've been talking about for the past few months. The budget preparation document that we've used throughout, the details are enrollment trends, ADM for pupil expenditures, all of those things are there. In case we want to reference those, and we probably will. And then the salary study document is there as well. So all of these details are here. We'll kind of move in and out of these. There were changes that were made last night. We were notified at, well, if it matters, 7:10, but last night we were notified there were changes, amendments made to the governor's proposed budget. And that is, since that governs state revenue, and that's one of the largest parts of what we anticipate and build our draft with. Mrs. Grasser was working on that last night, and so there have been some adjustments made. All the documents are updated. I did send a note out this morning just to make sure people know if they see that we, put something this morning. We'll make sure everybody understands why that is. It's not new documents so much as updated with any updated amounts or big revisions as a result of that. Those amounts. Okay, so with that, could we go to the? Is it easier to go to the shared slides and for me to operate from the shared slides, or do you want to?
Whichever you prefer.
I probably prefer the slides, so I could use this, but
The organizational, this one?
yeah, thank you. Okay, So I've continued to meet in the schools to have conversations. I've now done block parties, which, as you know, are small meetings with all staff members throughout the day in all the schools. And we've basically been communicating, engaging about 3 high-level buckets of consideration that we can talk about here as well. One related to compensation. We talked about the fact that, go back. The fact that 3 years ago, we compared ourselves to 13 divisions. We narrowed that to a subset of those that we felt like we truly competed with. Goochland, Louisa, Charlottesville, Elmore. We looked at every step of every scale, every pay band, every position. Found that we were inordinately low, lower in some than others, but low across the board. Dead last in many, and so the board had a very aggressive plan, worked with the county. We were able to take a big bite out of that. We weren't able to close the gap in many cases because even though double-digit increases were given that year, and that is something to truly celebrate. If we demonstrated that in order to be not fourth, so kind of in the average range, it would take 20-some% increase. The 13% that many people got, which is amazing, wasn't the 20 that was needed to be average. So that same year, increases were given where they could be in our neighboring divisions, Goochland specifically. They found themselves last in some areas and didn't want to do that for more than a year, and they didn't. Albemarle gave mid-year increases that year to try to address that. So we talked about this, just putting us on the same page, that we're slipping back into last place. And so we've been talking about the extent to which that is a focus that this board wants to place emphasis upon with investments next year. We were able also to address scale A and B that we had for teachers. And just for folks that were part of that conversation, everybody in 2010 and 11, during the economic downturn, everybody, meaning all school divisions in Virginia, had to make dramatic adjustments to deal with the sudden withholding of state revenue mid-fiscal year. And so pretty much everybody had the same iteration of struggle with freezing salaries, dealing with the next year. You got people moving to step 2, but you don't have a step 2, step 3, step 4. So you have this insidious compression that becomes a part of the salary scales. And everybody tried to deal with that in their own way. In Fluvanna, we had 2 scales. We had an A and a B, which meant we had 2 teachers teaching next to each other in the same building. Could be the same course content, could be the same years of experience, but dramatically different salaries because of which they're placed on. And we were able to fix that. We did away with one, put everybody on the other one, and so that these are all things to celebrate. But with regards to compensation, the governor includes a 3% raise. The wording of that is different every year. We don't know what it's going to be once the General Assembly is finished, and sometimes, in order to leverage the state funding that is their portion of that raise, you have to give the 3. Sometimes they will prorate the state funding if you can only give 2, or only give 1. So that remains to be seen. Right now, everything that we see from the state is a 3% raise, and everything I hear from my colleagues, whatever this is worth, they're in the same place we are. So the extent that I can say confidently to my colleagues what we're looking at in terms of a raise, they're in the same boat. But what I hear is pretty much everybody moving towards a 3%, with the exception of Charlottesville, anticipating more.
I think our prep meeting the other day was pretty telling. I think everybody at the table lost their mind a little bit at thinking about a 5% raise for kind of inter-county or shared staff when we can only do 3 of them.
So compensation, I won't belabor that point, we'll have plenty of time to talk about. The second related is the cost of health insurance, the increasing cost, the extent to which the board would want to continue to absorb increased costs. Our premiums are high. They're not sustainable for many of our staff, depending on which plan they're on. Family plan for a teacher is $1,100 a month. It's not really doable for many teachers, many staff members. And so for the past 3 years, as those costs have increased, and they have every year, insurance has gone up. The board has decided to absorb, increase the operating budget, make space in the operating budget for whatever is needed to not pass any of that off to staff. So hasn't been lowered for staff, but it's not gone up for staff. We've been able to address salaries and keep those costs level, which has been very positive. This year, we've been told, initially told to anticipate a 12% increase, which we've modeled in the budget spreadsheet that Mr. Grass was going to walk through with you. Yesterday, so yesterday she was told, I think you can anticipate maybe closer to 10. That's in the positive direction, but it's still a 10% increase. It's still an increase that would cost more than $500,000 if we were going to absorb that and not pass it off to teachers. I'll pause here for a minute and just tell you the conversations I've had with teachers, and they've been, not just teachers, staff members in those meetings, majority of them teachers. They've been very engaged, very forthcoming, and I think have really expressed appreciation for being brought to the table in that way, be able to give their opinions about these things. And as you would imagine, and they all say this, and it's evident in the feedback, my opinion on what you should do with insurance and salaries is very much dependent on what stage of life I'm in, what my personal considerations are. So it's very hard for me to tell you quantitatively, the majority of staff feel discouraged with that. Is it more important to keep health insurance costs down or to keep salaries competitive? And the answer is yes. That's just the truth. The one thing that we've talked about that I'll just remind everybody is that while an increase in premiums and an increase in pay, the delta of that, depending on what those increases are, impact take-home pay in a way that can be very difficult. Any increases to salary do affect retirement benefits, correct? So I do want to just make sure we're all on the same page with that. Whereas maintaining level premiums impacts take-home pay. I'm not telling you which one of those is more important about. But one does impact retirement benefits, which everybody full-time employee has, and not every full-time employee participates in it. And then the third bucket is related to people and programs. We've talked about the positions that we have continued to fund with federal grant money through the ESSER funding, the expiration of that funding, and the ability to leverage the all-in funding that the governor has provided. And as those things sunset and changes happen with the Literacy Act and frankly, student needs, the school accountability model that the state has decided upon finally, and what we're going to be held accountable for and how we're going to be accredited. There's several positions that are critically needed that also come with a price tag we need to consider. So those three buckets, and I don't want to just minimize that third bucket to those positions because there are other positions. All the schools have expressed dramatically through the survey, through my conversations with them, our conversations with them. And each level is a little bit different, but some iteration of we desperately need help with managing, addressing, intervening, unprecedented student mental health needs and student behaviors. It looks different with its primary age kids than it does with their 17-year-olds, but that's clear. So having said that, Before we jump into talking about looking at the spreadsheet and looking at some of the, specific things that you might want to talk through, let me just revisit. What's that? Let me revisit with you. Well, no, what do I need to do, John? Yeah.
It may be easier to log into the PowerPoint itself.
Okay. That's right. I can do this real quick.
I have extras.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. It's okay. Go ahead and go to the next one.
Not every day you get an IT director for help desk level one.
Some of these, so you have this.
Yes.
Some of it might be a little difficult to see on the screen. So this is just a reminder, okay? Before 2011, is this the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, so before 2011 and in 2011, several positions were eliminated. And there was a reduction in force at the, let's say, the leadership level, although there were coordinator level positions as well. Next slide. Okay, so that's what it looked like. Those are just reversed. Next slide. Again, in 2017, there were further reductions that were made at the leadership level. And at each one of these, you can go to the next slide, Dr. Stridlin. We went through this obviously a couple of months ago in detail, and these slides are available if anybody wants to access them. But essentially, in both the instructional and the operational bucket, there was diminished support. There was a reduction in the academic level interventionist specialists that were working in schools to support teachers. You can go to the next slide. So just reminding everybody that this happened and our structure has not recovered from that. Now, ideally, next slide. What we would have, and this is in response to essentially you guys asking me, like, what should it look like? Now, the reality is, I don't think there is one golden organizational structure that is the best. A lot of that depends. I do think there is a general structure that is ideal, but specifically, how many directors, how many coordinators, how many supervisors, in what areas, I think a lot of that depends, especially in a small rural division, on every one of these has a domino effect. And the extent to which you want to have more robust leadership in one area depends on the lack of robust leadership in another area. And in small rural places, we try very hard not to do this. But the reality is, because all of these functions need to be addressed, and these are just the high level functions in each of these areas. Positions often grow around people, which is part of what's forcing this conversation, is that one of those people who've been here for decades and positions have grown around her is exiting. And so we have a position that is very uniquely fit to somebody that is not the kind of position we just go out to the market and try to find another exact person like this. And that's true of all of them. So what this would look like is essentially one level of the organization devoted to instruction and one level devoted to business operations, administration, however you want to refer to that. And so I won't read this to you, but basically robust leadership that addresses support and direction for elementary and secondary instruction. Now, right now, we're accomplishing that with Mrs. Grasser, who has a background in secondary instruction, and Mrs. Soren, has a background in elementary instruction. They're doing 1,000 other things, but that's kind of how we're saying these things are addressed in our organization. Ideally, exceptional education would be our vision, special education being part of that, and gifted education being part of that. Right now, we really don't have robust leadership and focus on gifted education. At the secondary level, what we have is governors. And that's great for those students to go to governors. But I think if you will find in other divisions where there is more dedicated support for gifted education, there's students who are identified gifted and make their way through our grades, and by the time they get to high school, unless there are teachers that specifically will differentiate for them, there's not a dedicated programmatic support for those folks. And I have heard that expressed in our community from some parents. So right now we have robust leadership in special education. I think the most ideal would be for us to look at that as exceptional education. IDA covers both ends of that spectrum. And for a reason. Career and technical education. Student services kind of bleeds over into both. But that's where we talk about supporting homeless students, foster care students, student discipline, all of that. Alternative education, which, as you know, is taking on a completely different face as we move through, I guess I would just say this, the changing demographic of students and families that we're serving. The traditional one-size-fits-all model of school and high school doesn't work for all kids anymore, and it hasn't for quite a while. And divisions have been trying to address this for, frankly, decades. But it's continuing to change, and we're continuing to find it. There are students who thrive in more flexible environments that are more personalized, what students need, instead of asking all students to become square, to fit through a square hole, that we design programs that meet students where they are. So our need to be adaptive there and to have robust leadership in that field, I think is critical. We've talked about the academic support specialists. That's part of what we're dealing with in next year's budget in literacy and math. We have no support in social studies and science. We haven't for quite some time. Assessment, accountability, state reporting, mental health, attendance. We talked about all these things. Basically, what I want to show you is, I think this is where we need a robust structure of leadership to support and advance these things. Technology moves across the spectrum because you have instructional technology and what that looks like in the classroom and supporting teachers. And then you have what I'm calling the operations side of technology. Software, infrastructure, data, cybersecurity. And then we talked about communications and public relations. I have a couple of slides dedicated to that, so I'll kind of reserve that. But is that instruction? Is that operations? I think that's just general work on behalf of the school division. Same thing is true on the other side. Finance, you can see the things that are there right now. I mean, if you look at just the county, which is I don't mean for this to be a comparison so much as just to give us a context. A much smaller organization. That has people dedicated to procurement. We don't have any of that. And there's so many laws and regulations attached to the way school divisions procure things and purchasing. That's just one example of the kind of thing that is very highly regulated, but it's just kind of being parsed out for people at this point with the hopes that it's done well. And it has been done well. Same thing is true on the HR side. We don't have anybody dedicated to that. That's been tacked on over the years as those positions have been eliminated to existing leaders. And our ability to recruit and onboard and support staff is probably, I don't want to start saying which one's more important, because the reality is that the one that's most important is the one that's being litigated, maybe. I mean, and all of them are highly regulated. But that's where our focus is. We have somebody dedicated to licensure. That in and of itself is a full-time job. And I applaud the board for working 2 years ago to advance that from a secretarial position to a coordinator position, where it should be. So that is an area that needs to be really supported by somebody who's well versed in personnel regulation, in Title IX, in so many of those things. So benefits, workers' comp kind of goes across finance and human resources. And I'll let you take in the rest. I don't need to read it to you. This to me is the ideal structure. The way I would assign which one's a director and which one's a coordinator would depend on a lot of different things. And basically, if you go back to, I'm not asking you to do this, if you go back to the structure of this organization, 2011, that's what you have. Minus the communications. Did not see that there. Yes.
So it's kind of a, I hope I phrased this question correctly. How many years behind are we with our current structure versus where like an optimally structured school system would be on that chart? Like our, and I'll add to this, our schools are awesome
Yeah.
at doing what we
Absolutely.
do with what we have. But if that's ideal, how many years behind would we say Fluvanna County Public Schools is? Basically saying like we're operating in the past, because right now I'm hearing we're at least 14 years behind because we never caught up from the 2011 RIF.
I think that's true. I mean, I think that's evident in terms of positions. I'd probably want to think about that before I assign years. One thing that comes to mind is, I think it was my first year here, which would have been fiscal 21. Right? 110. Anyway, my first year here, the board worked really hard to maintain a grant funding. We used grant funding before I got here to put a fourth ITRT in place, Instructional Technology Resource Teacher. And that person was dedicated to high school. And if you guys remember, those of you that were on board, we worked really hard to keep that position, right? So every school had a dedicated ITRT. We did that next door in Goochland in 2008. And the year that we were trying to keep that fourth ITRT to make sure every school had one, other school divisions had those and were assigning instructional coaches, technology resource teachers, instructional coaches. Which is why the spreadsheet that Ms. Sora shared in the last meeting showed that some of our neighbors, you know, have a lot, I'm using the term robust a lot, but they have a lot of support in that regard. And Fluvanna does not. It's, you know, Jim Collins, good to great. You confront the brutal facts. I'm not even assigning, I'm not opining on it. Just the facts are, we don't have that support. We did, but we don't. Okay. Next slide. Just for reference, because I've been asked, this is what you see in Goochland. And I'm not gonna read this to you, but you've got two assistant superintendents, one devoted to instruction, one that they call it administration. You can see what they're doing over there. And then look at all the division coordinator level positions and director level positions. We have a supervisor of transportation, there's a director of transportation. Same thing with, again, I won't read all that to you. This is just, you can refer to it later. Next slide. This is Charlottesville. Same thing. Look at all the director level positions to advance areas that we don't have anybody. We don't have even those departments in some cases. And there are folks who have stepped up and are trying to meet the needs to address those things. Next slide. This is orange. You never know, who to present. But again, just frame of reference, I noticed this was going to be too small, so I just blew those up just so you could see. Executive director and director level support, and then beneath all of those, if you can't see, it's too small. There's a lot of support there, and I guess what I'd say, I'm trying to paint a brief picture. You go to the next slide. But the reality is, you know, when you show up at a bike race, I mean, you only need two wheels to ride. But, you know, Fluvanna is not showing up with the same kind of bike. And I think you do get to a place where it's not a competition, in my mind, it's not a competition. Now, with regards to competing for the shrinking pool of teachers, that's hard to not look at that as a competition. But do I want our kids to outperform kids over the border in Buckingham? I want those kids to do well too. Just like I would say to folks in Fluvanna, if you don't have kids in our schools should be providing a benefit that's tangible to you. Not just that you have kids in our schools, it behooves you for the kids that are going to be a part of this community to be well educated and well supported. The same thing is true of me, of kids, you know, in Southwest Virginia or Loudoun County. So it's not that I don't want them to do well so we can shine. But I think you do get to a point where you're showing up to the bike race with a different kind of bike and one that really does not function the same way. But there is an extent to where you really can't compete with a tricycle. And I think we just have to be careful. I've put what I think would be ideal in terms of positions that would support the work that we would do here. And I think I would eat up too much of our time for me to go through each one of these. And we've consulted on this. I appreciate leaders that have helped me put this together, but this slide, the next slide, shows the way I think we are and could accomplish appropriately addressing all of these different areas. The next slide. Well, a lot of these things now are being kind of absorbed.
But what it sounds like is the schools have saved the county millions and millions and millions of dollars since 2011.
I think that's
By
true.
not, and I say this not to take a shot at anybody, but when I say by not investing in the schools more to have, this part is business right here. This is how you build out an organization
Sure.
that directly impacts the product, which we have as education. We've saved the county millions and millions and millions of dollars since 2011 without a whole lot of the investment coming back.
I think that's accurate. And, you know, every year we've had a big focus together. We've talked about this. I mean, some of this is subjective on my part. I come to a new place and I start to just kind of view it through my lens and with my experiences, but I think you take, I think we paint the whole picture. What does it look like in other divisions? That in and of itself is not a reason for us to do it. But I do think it's telling when everyone has the same sort of structure, there's a reason for that. At the end of the day, in my mind, Fluvanna needs to decide what kind of bike it wants us to ride. That's it. And the feedback I get from folks when I'm in the schools and from teachers is there are some high expectations for some excellence. And I think that, there's some missed opportunities there. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Next slide. I can't remember what it is, but, oh, okay. We'll get to this now. I painted all that for you because when we get to the spreadsheet, you know, the budget worksheet that we use has things that are above the line and they're part of that delta. And then we have things below the line. We can move up and, you know. I didn't include everything above the line. I put some things in there and I'm going to try to explain how they address what I think would be the ideal structure. We've not built a worksheet that reflects what I think is the ideal structure. We can do that today, but that's not what I did. But some things in there, and again, we'll get to that. I want to just run through this quickly, and we've spent some time making sure everybody knows what attendance interventionists do, what our academic interventionists do. I just want to put this on your radar. We've talked about this. I've never really taken the time to walk through why I think this is important. This is an author named John Gordon, I think, but there's avoiding communication negativity built. We've all experienced that, no question. Next slide. So our ability to be clear and consistent is important. The more clear and consistent we are with pushing out communication, the more people trust and have confidence in what we're doing and what we say. It builds cohesion. And then finally, our ability to be proactive, to get out in front of not just negativity, because sometimes negativity might be warranted, but to get out in front of misinformation, to get out in front of speculation. That to me is our goal. And so we're going to kind of fly through these. If we could onboard a position like every other division has, dedicated to communications, public information, whatever you want to call it, what I've modeled in the spreadsheet is a teacher contract. I don't think the person that does this in Louisiana is on a teacher contract, but I'm just starting somewhere. These are just some ideas that I'm telling you that we could realize that nobody right now in the leadership structure with the structure with it is now can do this without letting some of those other balls drop. Videos weekly highlighting the things that are happening in our schools. Everything that I see that comes from next door, and this is not, I don't mean this to be us versus Louisiana. They're promoted a lot because they promote themselves a lot. And all those things, the thing that was on the Today Show a couple months ago, we're doing that. And people don't know we're doing it. Every year during the budget season, I get comments that say, you guys should go solar. We've been solar for 4 years. All of our schools are powered by solar. We're paying less for electricity than we would have been if we didn't do that. And nobody knows that. I won't say no one. But our ability to push out those stories, manage the social media accounts. We have people that do that now and they do a great job. What if somebody could do all of it and not just Facebook, but all the other places where people are? I won't read these to you, but I think this is an important thing for us to consider moving forward. What benefits? I think we could this is part of our strategic plan, is engaging our community in the life of our schools. This would be a way that we could really do that, create buy-in around the things that we want to do, because people would know about it, they would understand it. They'd have positive connection to our schools. I know that some of you, I'm speaking your language, you've been talking about this. Building pride in our schools, showcasing all the things that we're doing. Consistent, timely communication across all the different levels of our people. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter anymore. That's where people are. We need to be meeting people where they are. And it would create space for leadership to do the things that I'm hearing that people want us to be doing. When I go into the schools, right? I want leadership that's engaged in instruction, helping me in my classroom, looking at what's going on, also want discipline handled in a timely way. You got a skeleton group, can't do all of that. Okay. I'm just simply saying, if we could be the first ones to tell our story, I think our community would respond very positively. Next slide. We won't click on these, but I will tell you, if you go back to the slides, every one of these, if you click on it, opens up to a space. Now, just using Louisa as an example, because they're close by, we're connected to them, and they're doing an amazing job with this.
Do you know if they have students helping with this content? Or that's a whole different
You
area.
can see examples in there.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like helping create the content.
Yes.
Okay.
That if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of student created content. Yeah, and I can't tell you, I even know the extent to which they are.
Yeah.
But it's across the board. It's, again, we don't have time to go into all that, but I encourage you to look, just look. There's no reason that we couldn't be doing the same things. And just about everything that you'll see in there, it's generating all that positive support. It's already going on. Okay. So back to this. What you're gonna see in the spreadsheet are some elements of this that we've modeled for you to just consider. There are some, if you wanna look at, you know, my recommendation for what we would do with some of these that maybe aren't in the spreadsheet, we can put them in. We have placeholder figures that we can use. I do wanna give Ms. Suarez and Ms. Grasser, and I'm happy to jump in, but some time to walk you through a very pointed question that you asked last time, which was, as we talk about how many math interventionists and how many specialists and how many, what would it look like if we had the idea? What if we could just write our own ticket with that? And so this next slide, I'll invite Ms. Suarez to come up and maybe walk us through some of that. And again, it's hard to see, but we can probably, if you want us to blow up any of these areas, we can.
And pretty much most of this information was shared last month, just in a different format, but I agree, I think it's a lot clearer when you can see it just on one chart, sort of for comparison, so from last month, you know, there are the SOQs legislation requirements and staffing based on student enrollment that some of the areas have requirements around and some don't. We looked at, here's what our current staffing is, and what's highlighted in green is what's currently being funded by the all-in positions. And then the two new things are required staffing based on our current enrollment. So what we're currently required to have, and we are currently meeting all of those. There is a new proposed change for math requirements, but it has not passed yet. And even if it does pass this year, we have till FY28 before we have to completely have phased it in. So we do have some time with that. And then there was the request for the ideal staffing to meet those needs based on research, best practice in terms of position and grade span. So I worked with my instructional team and Caitlin's mental health team to kind of compile what that would look like. So if you want some time to just take it in, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then try to provide a little column of pluses mostly of, you know, what's the difference in all of our current staffing, if that current staffing column was fully funded for next year, and some are all in positions and some are not, what would be the difference? And you can see right now, you know, for division literacy specialists, we have one at elementary, one at secondary, it's working very well. So the net cost is zero, there wouldn't be a difference. Whereas right now, we have only one math specialist at the division level serving all of K-12. And if we could go back to a way that mirrors literacy and add one to kind of designate elementary and secondary, that would be ideal. So you can see that column of how many positions would be needed to get us to ideal, in addition to what our current is.
So in total for the ideal structure, and granted, yes, this is taking into consideration some of these with all-in funding, we are just shy of $2 million. And when I say this, I want to preface it with, we're doing a great job of what we have, but we're roughly $2 million short of the ideal structure of how to run Fluvanna County Public Schools with these certain positions. So ballpark 14 years behind and 2 million. What I'm trying to do is, people probably can see this by now, show how far behind we are compared to, and I look at it as a direct competition to our neighbors, to our closest competition. So am I understanding that correctly? Like we're roughly $2 million of funding each year behind in these specific areas if they were to be fully funded with the operational budget.
And right, instead of, and I'm sure the ideals maybe have changed over the years. I think, you know, I've been in the division over 20 years and well, longer even as a student, but you know, I think it's always been a point of pride for us to be able to do more with less, but I think, you know, and still be able to provide our students and families same opportunities as neighboring divisions, but I think we are getting to a point just with increased need that it is definitely becoming a struggle to to keep up, and not in a competitive way, but just to keep up with, providing our students what they need, so.
Can I clarify this source? So we've got this retain all the positions for 731, and then additional costs for annual staffing. Is that, that you sum those numbers if we wanted to have the ideal, or is the ideal 1.2?
So it's an and. So, the retention of those positions would be of our current staffing, and I don't have that sheet in front of me right now, but I believe it was 731.
Yeah.
And it can be offset with, I think, about 368 that we can carry over. Remember, our all-in spending plan took us through into FY 26, so there is some money, so sort of that offset, so I guess it's more like 400 and some thousand, but yeah, that's 400,000. And if you want to get to that ideal staffing with the 11 pluses off to the side, that would be plus the 1.1.
Which one?
The one you want.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm reading. I just want to make.
Well, I thought we were gonna have
That spreadsheet, yeah.
Reading that.
Just
No.
move it up a centimeter.
I was trying to adjust that, I can't figure out.
It's-
Oh, I got you.
It's okay, thank you for saying that at the bottom. So yeah, that, the
I just
green,
wanted to make sure they were additive and
They are added.
not inclusive, right?
We double check, triple check that.
yeah, I guess the only thing would be to take into account what we can carry over next year and help offset some of that 731.
The other thing to say in light of what we're talking about is, you know, are these expenditures that we have not asked for impacting the county? Sure they are. But let's not forget that in 2010, the General Assembly saved just under $1 million in revenue that was due to Manatee County. And that has remained in place ever since. That one-time Hail Mary emergency, we gotta do this year, has been done. So it's,
And we did,
that is continuing to impact us too.
and we did do a fair amount of work to make sure, you know, when we got all the COVID monies that we were scaling back each year so that we didn't find ourselves right in a, I guess it's referred to as that funding cliff from COVID. But then I mean, this is kind of what remains from all of those monies that just kept coming up again and again in terms of when we look at, needs, that, you know, when we were year before last year, trying to figure out what we were gonna do, and then we got the all-in money. It just made sense these were still a need to use those funds to support that.
Yeah, we probably should. Let me just pause though. I mean, that was a lot. Are there questions or comments or any reaction, discussion you want to have before we move on to the next?
My
And
initial.
again, that ideal probably is, 11 years of trying to catch up. I personally, if you were to ask my opinion, I don't know that that's, something that it could be accomplished in one year, or I don't think that's anybody's expectations. I personally think that the place to start would be those areas in green that, again, it's $731,000, we can offset, half of it with carryover money, but then that still leaves about 400,000 of it that would be new money to keep all of those positions in green.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, that's just pushing the spending cliff 1 year out for half of it, which is better than nothing. Sorry, I think Mr. Reed, you're.
I was gonna say, we're kind of, I'm a marketing brain, we're kind of operating off of a nickel marketing budget versus a dollar marketing budget. When you look, and still trying to get the same result, we're trying to sell water bottles, but if we have 5 cents a day to spend and our competitor has $1 to spend, you're gonna get your results you're gonna get, and I think we're crushing it for our county with what we have. Again, I just wanna make that very clear, but like, we're getting almost 2 decades behind here, if you look at it that way.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got the budget preparation document that has all the details about enrollment per pupil, special education numbers. I'm inclined to say, let's maybe start looking at the budget worksheet unless there are board members who want to revisit any of those concepts, or look at them and talk about them. There's no changes there.
Sorry, which concepts?
Any of the topics that are in that budget preparation kind of bigger document that we use throughout the process. Enrollment, salary, and salary study, we'll go back and revisit any of those figures or look at any of the specific scales, any of that information. I don't want to take you through. Don't want to be redundant, but if there are any of those that you'd like to look at, we have them available. Otherwise, we can jump right to the worksheet and look at the impact of some of this.
I'll say jump straight to the worksheet.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll note that, like, you know, our conversation so far has been remarkably sobering, right? I think that we've demonstrated that over the last 10, 15 years that we've effectively lost support and aid for our students and have grappled with limited funds and not been able to bring back and maintain a level of care and service to our kids. And it's quite awful to see, and it's quite awful to try to dig out of a 15-year hole. Now, granted, like, I want to recognize the fact that the county has been great partners to us, especially over the last couple of years. And we all know we had a big year a couple of years ago in terms of taking care of staff salaries and adding some positions. But I think all of this, we should find a way to really share with our partners. And if these are the things that we want to spend our time on during our budget session, or if these are the things that we want to bring forward or have, I know that some of our colleagues here meet with the Board of Supervisors, at least the chair, and perhaps one other member. Like, this is great fodder for that conversation, because, you know, the Board of Supervisors have a lot on their plate, and I don't think they routinely experience or confront this level of data, and so it's hard for them to know what's happening in our building. But I think that the staff has put together a remarkable blueprint for kind of where we were, where we are, and some options for where we can head. And we're not going to do it all in a year, but there are some clear low-hanging priorities that we're going to need to fight for. So all of that to say, one of the saddest hours of my week here, to say the least.
Time for the state to jump into.
I would love that.
And I think,
Help the county help us.
Give us action notice.
maybe before we do the spreadsheet, just very quickly, Dr. Strickland, can we go to the budget preparation PowerPoint and look at page 10? Just in line with what we're talking about.
Oh, right. So is this the doc? This is the kind of doc that we would normally provide and go through during the Board of Supervisors. Kind of want to see this board as a collective should provide guidance, but like that last sheet with the green highlights for what's all in funding and what's not, that should be in here. I think that's what we used to have in 2008 or 7. That's got to be in here. We should, to the extent that we can, really lean on the narrative, which is, can you believe a decade and a half ago, to a large extent, we were better situated staff and position headcount wise than we are today. And as we all know, our needs only increase. So I think if we can find a way to provide that juxtaposition between decreasing support and increasing need, whether that comes through, we all know the interventions of COVID and the impact of sort of economic downturn on kids, but if we could also manifest sort of increased need through demonstrating headcount and percentages in special ed and all of the sort of identified and high touch needs that our kids have, if we can provide that sort of juxtaposition between decreasing support and increasing need, I think that really provides a strong narrative to share with the county.
Yeah.
And I think it's genuine. It's not just,
No, it's
not
very
statement,
genuine.
it's storytelling.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and it's, I mean, we have to present that narrative because it's a narrative, but it's truth. And I can't say I'm new to this board, but I don't know if I've ever asked this question. Like, I don't know if I've heard this, I'm just kind of putting this out there because I think it might be good for everybody to chew on. I don't know if I've ever heard of the county and the schools saying, this is what we want to look like in 2028. And when we can say this is where we want to be in 2028, it doesn't mean that the funding that and there's no way, I mean, I was put out there, there's no way we're going to get this funding for FY26. But if the county knows this is what the schools need, and we can prioritize a strategic plan over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and even if that plan is just to catch up to where we used to be, well, now the county also knows exactly what we're saying from the school side to be like, this is what we need, help us get here. And then the county kind of also has a roadmap of like, okay, what might we need to change on that end, if anything, or really go to the state, whatever. Like, it gives us a roadmap of where we're going instead of, like you said, Dr. Gretz, we're always reacting to stuff. Instead of saying, help us get here and find $3 million over 3 years to do this. Like that to me is a pretty basic 101. And again, I don't know any business that's run without a 3-year roadmap. If you're operating month to month or every 12 months to run a business, then you're probably getting beat by your competitors.
This is a really compelling argument that we should be doing both this budget, but also future planning. So we have what, two and a half-ish new board members. Chris has had a term before. And I've heard nothing but in every instance of CIP and a request for money, all I've heard is, why isn't this on a roadmap? Why is it that we need this now, but you haven't had it on your CIP for the last 5 years? And so to that extent, to the extent that there is appetite and or demand for predictability, let's do it. And just see if we can't work together. I mean, certainly we've got a number of years for some of these new folks to, I think they'll be on. So it's a good time to roadmap.
This is great feedback. I think if the county and schools could partner on a document or some expression of a vision for what things would look like in the future, I think that would be really powerful. It'd probably be very hard for us, but I don't know that I've ever seen that. I'm sure it exists in some communities, but.
Do you think it requires outside assistance, or do you think that this can be done internally?
I don't know. I don't think I can answer that because I have, we maybe once a year, the two boards get in the room, so it's hard to know what that would look like in a public meeting. You have to really work coming and, have healthy conflict and all of that, but I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a matter of everybody kind of being able to get on the same page. I use the example, not to beat a dead horse, but 5 or 6 years ago, I was very passionate at the state level and advocating for the state to increase its support for school infrastructure and construction. Okay, we have kids in schools in Virginia that were built in 1901, and they're waterfall. And so, one of the things that I was saying is, like, if you go to Short Pump area and Deep Run High School, and then go to Orion High School, is a great teacher any less great in one of those? Absolutely not. But I mean, let's be real. Lance Armstrong, on his $25,000 carbon frame bike, won Tour de France. He's not going to do that on a $118 Huffy from Walmart. It does make a difference. Great teachers with great tools and great infrastructure and great leadership support can do more than they can without. That's just.
And at the end of the day, that impacts who moves to Fluvanna, which is why it's a much bigger conversation for us, and that it lands with the county in coalition with us. But I mean, one of the first things you look at before you move to a brand new county is how are the schools?
Yeah.
And you know, if we're doing the same as Louisa, but people don't know about it, well, they're gonna be like, man, Louisa's killing it, Savannah's not. That's just simply from one position, like you said, saying, killing it.
So, one of the things I wanna make sure happens, and I'm searching my board docs, I can't find it right now, but there'll be a couple of moments where, and especially one work session with the schools and the board of supervisors, and I know in a year past, we have not announced it as a meeting, and therefore no more than 2 members could appear. I would like to make sure that that meeting is announced as a meeting for this board. If more than 2 don't show up, don't call it in session, but I feel like it's inexcusable for us not to be able to sit down and have this conversation with the supers, and it requires calling the meeting in advance. And so I don't know if there's 2 other members who want to make sure that happens, but it's a hard must for me.
Yes, very reasonable. Everybody ought to be there if they want.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So it sounds like we have enough to make sure that that gets called as a meeting. Yeah. Incredible. One other thing that it's slipping my mind at the moment, so I will leave it for after we get into this.
Great. Okay, real quickly, just wanted to address,
I'm so terribly sorry. I do actually want to ask a question. I was at the Board of Supervisors on Wednesday, and I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating or providing evaluative judgment on this. But they did pass a motion to have a hearing as it relates to a meals tax, in which half of that revenue, I think they advertised it 6, with 3 going to schools for, and basically like an investment account for future school construction. So that happened on Wednesday night. Of course, it'll be, I think Mike Sheridan's out of town in February, so it'll be addressed or spoken about in March. But one of the questions that they kept batting around, I just didn't have an answer, was what year was Central built? Because it was a point of reference for sort of aging infrastructure. Do we have anybody on the top of their head?
1958 or 59.
58, 59? Oh, that's right. Cool, that is useful. There was a lot of references to board members being older than one another, but they can quite pinpoint the year. You all can imagine exactly what that was like.
to that point, I do want to clarify that. When I just said there are kids in Virginia in school in 1901, and I'm not talking about Fluent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was great.
Some of our supers might have been in school in 1901, but been replaced.
Okay, staff compensation, the next slide, Dr. Strickland, I think, oh, you got it, okay. Just put this on the same page. 2 years ago, we were able to give the 5%, gave another 2% to some scales that the board really wanted to support that were lower paid to begin with and lower. Gave a sizable increase to bus drivers and then increased the starting pay to $20 an hour. We were able to address that year, those 2 different teacher scales, and I can't tell you how that was crushing teacher morale for those that were on scale B, which was very positive. And then we're able to absorb the increase in health insurance. It was very positive year.
I gotta tell you, we were told for a decade that we just couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I think what we were able to show that year, really, this is grassroots, I wasn't there for a lot of that. There were a lot of things that changed, so I don't think that anybody was misled. I think, you know, as increases were given, as the scales, they came into a little closer alignment to enable us to do that. It wasn't there before. But let's be clear, that was big. That wasn't an easy thing to do. That was a big thing to ask and a big thing for the county to address. The next year, this was the year of the big salary study. So you can see the increases that were given. We capped everybody but teachers. Teachers essentially whatever it took to make sure they weren't fourth. And in some cases, that was 18%. In some cases, that was the 7 the state gave. but it was a huge year. Everybody else was capped at 13, so you can see the average increases that went to the different. And then again, that same year, we were able to hold staff harmless with the increase, meaning not passed off anything. So that's just bringing us to where we are. Well, I guess this fiscal year we're living right now. We did the state raise, the 3%. Gave more to custodians. Because again, it was just inordinately continuing to be so much lower. And once again, absorb the increase in health insurance. VRS, those rates change with the biennium, so we're not expecting any change with this forthcoming budget that will impact what you're doing. Minimum wage did not do necessarily what we were anticipating it was gonna do. You don't have any control of that. The state indicated one thing and then it did not do that exactly, so. Any questions about that? Just, yeah.
I'll just say that the way they're computing VRS right now is really confusing. We have a rate, they do something where they, for the hybrid people, it used to be, we contributed X amount, no matter what they contributed. Now, if they contribute more, we're basically having to match what they contribute. Which in my mind is a little bit of a flawed system, because you kind of don't want people to contribute more because it costs you less if they don't, but in reality, for their long-term financial health, you want them to. They're doing a kind of like an equalization with the Plan One people, where they're lowering what you're contributing for them based on what your hybrid people are contributing. So it's a formula that they're using now. We know what our rate is now, but when the biennium comes, it again will be confusing as they recenter that and equalize that. And so it is a much more confusing process than it used to be in the past. But hopefully long-term it benefits the employee. And certainly as we continue to go forth, there will be fewer Plan One and more hybrid.
Mr. Graves, I'm gonna make a comment.
Yes, sir.
I hear a lot of comparisons made, with their neighboring counties. Well, 4 of them right here, Albemarle, Charlottesville, Goochland, and Louisa. But 3 of those 4 are the wealthiest counties, around us. But we're trying to be competitive with them. We don't have the infrastructure that they do to compete with them. So that's on the back of the taxpayers. And I find fault in the Board of Supervisors on some of that, because they had a chance to take some of these businesses that Louisa has, and they didn't want them in Blue Mountain County. But then they turned around and built 300, unit neighborhoods and, adding new houses that actually cost the county money, because they don't have any infrastructure there to support them. That's just my comment.
Absolutely. Comments, you'll take it. Understand. I think there's always a tension or a balance, at least in trying to measure. We've talked a lot about it since I've been here, probably did before, and even more this budget year. The tension between partnering, we want to partner no matter what you do, partnering with the county to do what's feasible and makes sense and as best possible, try to address what the community's expectation is versus, regardless of how feasible it is, this is what we need. This is what it looks like, and starting there. So I do think that there's an extent to which just the world according to Pete Gratz, at least small rural places, my 35 years have been spent in those. Schools never really do ask for everything they need. And so there is a perception like every year, there's always a mountain of stuff that you sort of keep in your back pocket, you don't ask for. And so I do think there's value, even if it doesn't make its way into the final request, in putting it in the public discourse. So at least it's on people's radar. At this point, I think people know how I feel about it, and then just, you know, how the board feels about it, and then, yeah, just to make sure that we're clear on.
Yeah, I think a lot about sort of interest or discount rates when I think about what you just said, you know, if we only go up to, we only ask for 90% of what we need in a given year, and I don't think this board is coming anywhere close to that, to be frank. So I asked for 90 now, and next year I asked for 90. It was like accruing debts and or misses just accumulate exponentially and lead us to places like this where, you know, we're 15 years behind and are missing some odd number of positions and executive and support staff. And it's why I'm a big fan of ask for what you need and allow those who are elected to deal with the purse strings to make those decisions about how much they can afford.
So compensation is obviously the biggest part of your budget. About 75 to 80% compensation. Right now, in the governor's template, there's a 3% increase, and that was in the biennium budget that was passed by the General Assembly in May. But we heard talk when we were in conference that there was conversation at the General Assembly retreat, which I didn't even know they had a retreat, that must be fun. They had a 4% modeled in there, so there's a possibility of that, so that's why I put that there. They also discussed the possibility of a 1% bonus, so I'm gonna model that in the dynamic spreadsheet that we have. And remember when we looked at salary study, and if we talk about not going further behind, we really need to do a 6 in order to continue to not go further behind when you look at the salary study. But I also understand the cost of doing 6%.
And if we did a 6, that just puts us right in the median of everybody again. Like, I know we always talk about like not fourth, not last, but the 6 actually still doesn't put us first or second either, correct?
No, and the thing is, I can pull it up real quick. The thing, I modeled the salary study off of a 3. I'll pull up teachers, that's our biggest population. So I modeled that off of doing a 3% increase, and we would have, just to be in the average, we'd have to do 3.09 for that beginning step, but remember that is, everybody's gonna do 3, so that really becomes 6. And they're gonna do a 3 minimum, is everything that we're hearing right now, but I think there's likelihood that it would be bigger than that. Around, I'm talking about around us, not necessarily say. We've had lots of conversations about what that starting pay probably needed to be. Because that's a pretty big factor when you're talking about recruiting kids out of college, that's gonna be the thing that they're gonna look at. I'm gonna move to the spreadsheet, so this is not in the packet, but it will be added to the packet after the meeting. It's dynamic, so we can move things around, delaying, because it's gonna be a little shocking. Okay, here's where we are. So this was the 22,269, that was your baseline funding from your board of supervisors last year, their budget that they adopted in April. And, you know, when I look at the template, we have some increased spending in governor school project return, remember, those are not your funds, so you kind of have to back that off. Good, right? I love having tax report right here. I don't know if there's a reader.
What is the aim?
It's trying to suit it a little bit.
Okay.
That's better. All right, so I'm sorry, what?
You deleted the number for the,
Yeah.
Oh, no, don't do that.
You mean, yeah, there you go. Hit enter and then hit back. You gotta close out the cell first. Now do undo. There you go.
There you go. Oh, shoot. I copied this in my file before I put it up here so that I wouldn't lose anything, because I was like, oh. When you look at the template, we are actually gonna have, a reduction in state funds by about 122,000, and that's largely driven by the decrease in enrollment. And when I'm talking about a reduction in state funds, I'm looking at what was appropriated from the state in fiscal year 25 and what's in the template right now for fiscal year 26. We're also gonna have a reduction in federal funds based on our projections of where we were on those federal funds, and some of that's things that we carried over at the beginning of this year that are expiring, so we're not going to have those funds. And then it's, the way I have this built is kind of funky, but we will have all-in carryover money, or we can have all-in carryover money that would equate to about 368,000. So that's actually a net gain in that area. We talked about the 3% increase for staff. That costs a little over $1 million. And in the template right now, there's $993,000 to cover that increase. My concern is I'm not exactly sure how they're computing that, and I'm a little bit worried about what that will look like for fiscal year 27. We've had some conversations. I've looked at the language. Usually it's not that much of an increase. I will say that looking at our average pay, our projected average pay for next year and the average pay they're using in the template are fairly close. And so that could be part of where that calculation is, but, just kind of keeping an eye on that. And, I was texting Dr. Gretz and Ms. Soares last night going, I can't believe I got an email at 7:10 PM that says they've changed the template. And then I went in trying to figure out what they changed. I don't see what they've changed, but they're saying it's a technical edit. So I don't know if there's a formula on the back end, but the overall dollar amount didn't change. But again, just a reminder of how quickly those things can alter, and it's over 50% of our budget.
I'm wildly skeptical about that number. I don't see a.
I am
world in
too.
which-
I'm anxious to see the General Assembly template. That'll give me some affirmation on that.
I mean, don't we usually have to spend like 800,000 to get like 450 from the state?
Yeah, the formula's a lot different. I don't know if it has to do with what they did with support caps and percentages that they did last year. I don't know.
That number's going down.
I will
So
continue to try to
stable.
research that, see if I can get some answers.
I mean, they made a mistake in the template a couple of years ago that was devastating and way too long to identify. So
Sure.
I'm just calling this as one of those snafus that we'll find out about in a month or two.
I don't know, they've been really careful about sending out the templates now. Like they're double and triple checking them, and, but they do have a disclaimer on there. It's basically, sorry if we make a mistake, that's on you. It's what the disclaimer pretty much says.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Oopsie.
I also want to be indemnified from all professional error.
Yeah. We got a call yesterday afternoon that, it's looking more like we're trending towards a 10% increase in health insurance as opposed to the 12. So I've changed that number in here. We talked about we added the Centrix wearable badges, as part of something we did with carryover money, but we do need to add that annual expense to our budget. And then, do you want to talk about the issues that we're seeing in cafeteria? That's really not part of the template. Back to them.
well, in general, the issue that we have is when we approached last year, you guys will remember, when we approached the decision of whether or not to participate in the CEP, which would enable us to offer free meals, breakfast and lunch to all students. The reimbursement is calculated largely based on our free and reduced rate. So whether or not we're eligible, if you're eligible, you have to apply. if you're found eligible, then you decide whether or not you're gonna do it based on financials. And the financials were all related to our anticipated loss in revenue because people don't pay their lunch bill. I don't know any other way to say that. It was, I think, $70,000 last year. So we knew that there was gonna be a dip. The question was, which one's gonna be worse? Are we gonna pay more in making up the difference in people not paying for the lunch? Or are we gonna pay more to participate in this free meal program? What we're experiencing is, ironically, less participation in the meal program now that it's free. That's the best way I know to describe it. I mean,
Well, I mean,
food costs have gone up. Yeah, go ahead.
you would just anticipate that almost all of your kids would participate in a free meal program, but it's actually more running like 66% are participating.
When you say participating, you mean getting there.
Getting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the reimbursement is based on the number of meals that you're serving, and so if you're not serving 100% of your meals, then you're basically losing reimbursement money. Your food costs are gonna go up, obviously, if you're serving more food, but the real cost here is the personnel costs. If the cafeteria payroll with extended ed is close to $100,000 a month. And so, you know, we've been meeting with, Ms. Jones, talking through different scenarios, things we could do to try to increase participation, to try to, do more à la carte things. But it's a concern, and we are going to have to assist the cafeteria in February to cover their payroll.
So do we have any feedback as to why less students are participating after this change? Under the assumption that the meals have not changed? I've got some thoughts that I don't know if it's the right time to share, but
Well, not that we necessarily have less participating since we changed, we just don't have as many participating as we would have thought.
that's really
Okay.
a more accurate.
Cause like I looked at,
It's the same. We thought. it was
so
gonna
we
be-
forecasted more to go get the meals.
We thought it was free to pretty much
Pretty
everyone,
much
even if it's not 100, probably 95% will probably take it. Especially when we're doing things like grab and go. You know, you don't have to go in and go through the line, you just walk past it and you get it.
one that sticks out in my head is, cause I was looking at it yesterday, was high school breakfast. Last year, we served about 100 high school breakfasts a day. This year, we're serving 250. Yeah, that's more, but there's almost 1,300 kids at the high school, so. You know, how can we increase that participation?
And I don't want this to sound disparaging, because I truly don't mean it that way, but the reality is, we've been helping the cafeteria because there's been so much unpaid meal debt every year. We're gonna have that this year, unless miraculously it didn't happen. I think as I just reflect on it, you know, for all of us who went through this and our ability to say, no cost to you, that's a big deal. If most students have just kind of been going through their day and getting their meals, and then when, you know, the MyBucks bill comes, parents aren't paying it as a kid, what's different this year than was different last year? What's the, you know, if I'm not paying for my meal last year, when I was supposed to, I'm not paying it this year because I'm not supposed to, what's changed?
Is the food the same as last year as this year?
There's a lot of, and I'll just throw this blanket statement out there as feedback from community. There is conversation around how much prepackaged food is served. And that, I'm not saying that as a criticism, I'm just saying, just relaying feedback. And so that, I'm with Mr. Key when it comes to that question being, are people not eating because most kids are getting a donut for breakfast in a prepackaged piece of plastic that's heated in plastic? I think from what I've been told, don't know, just relaying communication.
Yeah.
Versus pancakes and food that looks appealing to a kid to be like, man. And then also for the parents to say, because I think this could be, hey, Johnny, you're not getting food there because I don't think it's healthy enough for you. And I don't know if that's a disconnect between schools and community, but just relaying feedback that I've heard. But I do have a question now that this is brought up. Is this a cause for, and this might sound tedious, but I've been approached about it. Things like straws not being provided to kids now in the cafeteria due to needing to find ways to save cost. Yet we also throw away trays from every student every day instead of doing things like washing dishes. I know there's a cost to everything, but
Sure.
since we're on it,
We're actually.
I'm just
We've
curious.
been working to get things operational to go back to the washing the trays.
Okay,
We have some issues in some of the cafeterias.
yeah, I know like a dishwasher's out.
Yeah,
but
we need
yeah.
to do some repairs, but that is one of the things that we're looking at. I can't really speak to straws, that hasn't.
Literally, that was like a this week thing that I had some people
Yeah.
being like, hey, there's no straws in the silverware packets anymore.
I
For a
mean,
3-year-old, that
We're
could be
looking
tough, yeah.
at some of those kind of cost saving, like with the trays and those sorts of things, but honestly, that's really minimal.
Right.
Where the issue is we need to find that balance between, purchasing food where kids find it appealing, but then also, and attracting more kids to that, but then also not costing us out on that end on the food that we're providing. So just we're trying to work with other local cafeterias, talk to them about what they're doing, what's working there. It's a process that we're going through, but I can assure you, we're meeting almost every week, talking about, where we are right now, and what we need to do. We're in such a different position than we were in the past. We particularly, when we had COVID money and they were just sending us money to pass out food to everybody. And,
Driving it to people's homes.
yeah, I mean, and then now we're in a position where we're running a restaurant and we're trying to figure out how we can work out that balance. We're looking at personnel costs and what kinds of things we can do on that side. But the big thing is, I think we need to attract more kids to eat more meals.
What's current on the Olive carte? What can
I'm
you
sorry?
currently get on the Olive carte, I guess, extra?
We just, the question about Olive Garden, we just in the last, I want to say week,
Okay,
increased all of that.
okay,
That has caused some disruption for teachers at the elementary level.
Hmm.
Again, it's
new stuff.
trying to make as much available and we want to generate revenue, but we also want to do something that makes sense for people that are trying to establish routine with 8-year-olds.
And there's a big time factor at the elementary level.
Big
I
time
mean,
factor, and it's
they're on big time crunch time, getting through that cafeteria to get out back to class on time.
yeah, and it's a big deal for us to sit next to each other and for her to have ice cream and a cookie, and I don't. And I don't understand that when I'm 7.
Yeah. I have a question based on just the sheer cost of it, not thoughts on programs, good or bad. If right now we're looking at covering the month of February, did I understand that correctly?
We're probably not gonna have to do we won't have to do the entire payroll, but we're gonna have to do a portion of it, yes.
Okay, so I think we had said something, and I'm going back here with a lot of numbers today and over the year. We were roughly 125,000 in debt through the first half of last year at the high school, I think.
I think that was annual.
Okay, so roughly 125 and
We
then,
ended up dropping that down. I mean, I think we ended up around 50 at the end.
so my question, and that's where a lot of my decision personally, I don't want to speak for anybody else when I say this thought. That's where a lot of my decision was built on with this. Lunch debt versus
Sure.
non-lunch debt.
I think that was
That's
all.
what we were thinking.
Oh.
If we have to cover more than 1 month based on this program, did we just surpass how much money we would have had to cover in lunch debt? Well, I'm looking at the opportunity cost of,
This is what we're doing too.
yeah, hopefully this doesn't
If
continue,
something
but
doesn't change, we will surpass what we paid in lunch debt. And so that's why we're looking at what can we change. But if we can increase the number of meals we're serving, that may have a pretty dramatic effect, because we wouldn't change the personnel. we'd have to purchase more food, but that's not where the expense is, it's in the personnel. I mean, that food is an expense. She is using the USDA foods whenever she can. I think they have a set formula on what you can get and how much you can get based on your community. She tells us she's maximizing those USDA foods. You know, they have all those legal requirements about what they call what, and 'cause I made a face about donuts.
Has anybody asked the kids why they're not eating, middle school, high school students, why they're not eating the lunch?
So, yeah, is this an opportunity for better
Education.
communications with the families, right? So,
We've increased that too, trying to just promote it.
We need Mr. Reed to do a video, why shoot your lunches with
Why?
food?
so this is free for families, and I understand the decision-making between sort of like nutrition and what you want your kids to have, et cetera, but for all families, this is free and obviously supported by other means. So, you know, to the extent that the answer to solvency is increased demand, then like, maybe we should be using our communication channels more to highlight what's on the menu, to take photos of the food that's available there, and make sure that our families know what we're providing. And any assurances that we can provide that are real about the like health and dietary aspects of it. Like, this is a communication issue, and I think that we can close that.
I don't wanna speak for them. I know that they've got their own separate Facebook page. I don't know how followed it is or if it's like updated daily, but I have seen them do a little bit of that. Not tons.
I think we can increase take rate
If you click, we met, beat a dead horse, if you go back to my communication director slides, and you click the USA Today.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, the Today Show link,
Mhm.
that is Louisa's national story about the very thing we're talking about, promoting this,
And I will say that.
and they got more participation.
For promoting CEP specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Wow.
We've met, Ms. Grasser had said, we've met fiscally on a fiscal level with Ms. Jones on a weekly basis since this, but we also met from a PR standpoint, and Dr. Gretz is correct. Brandy, myself, Ms. Jones, we're gonna start initiating that. So yes, she does have one. We're gonna take our new platform, Apogee, we want to balance it to our families. We don't want to inundate them with it because then they won't look at it anymore, right? But we are going to share the same information we've been sharing, but give them an opportunity to communicate back with us. That should start next week. Specific to this scenario.
Don, you're tracking, open, deliver, click-through rates on all your outgoing messaging? So you have a platform,
Yes, absolutely.
and you're going to be communicating with the public.
Yes,
And so you should be tracking your metrics as it relates to how effective your communication channel is. And so I'm sure it's built into it, but like,
the analytics.
you're talking about being worried about sort of like overexposure leading to like less engagement. And so like track it. Like, how many messages did you send out on these messages? How many people like clicked on the thing to look at it? How many of them clicked through a given link if you put a click here to learn more? And that way you can effectively avoid the sort of like, the ruin of the comments, if you will. Right?
Saturation and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Thank
to
you.
the extent that that's a consideration, like that is very trackable and predictable, and you can avoid having that decline if you like pay attention to your rates.
Thank you.
Ms. Gratzer,
Yeah.
Mr. Gratz, before we go any further, either one of y'all, this is just a question, have any idea how much food is thrown away during the day?
I can't answer that.
I've had people come to me and tell me they see a lot of food thrown in the dumpster. So, and it's packaged food, you know.
Yeah, one of the conversations we had was kind of trying to push, more of the breakfast, particularly at the high school. And then we were talking about, well, we don't want them to just take it and then throw it away. And so we were having a lot of conversation about, how do we get that to work? And I do think, purely the high school is some of its time. But, she's trying to serve a coffee drink that meets USDA requirements, and she says, very good. And then she sees a kid walking in with a Dunkin's bag and coffee, so, you can make the argument about healthy, when I'm kind of like, that isn't good either.
I asked my kids, I hate to use the conversations like this, but I'm just curious, about 15-year-old. He's like, do you get breakfast? I mean, it's free, walk right by. He's like, I don't know. That morning, I'm like, why do you do it? Just get it. I don't know if you were that night. I said, did you get breakfast? He said, yeah. What was it? Was it good? Yeah, French toast. Why doesn't he do that every morning? I don't know. He's 15. At 8, it's not on his mind. At 10, he'd probably go in there and eat 5 of them. It's really hard to.
I've got one that eats breakfast 5 days a week at school, and I've got one that eats breakfast at home 5 days a week at school. My one that eats, and I'll pick on him, he eats a donut 5 days a week. And that's not what is the menu item.
Right.
That's the quick and easy.
That those are available every day.
I love donuts.
Edition.
Everybody loves a donut.
Yeah.
That's what a kid's gonna get instead of going to a line and being like, ooh, French toast sticks, which are also pretty good. Excuse me. It's, and that's, I think that point right there, just hearing what I have been communicated to, healthy or not, I'm sure everybody's house and what they eat at restaurants is up for criticism as well. But I think it's when, well, all they're gonna get is a donut when I'm not there, also drives some people, even though there is a better offering sometimes. And I think that might be the conversation of, hey, you don't even, we'll pay for it even though it's free. Eat at home or don't get that. Just putting it out there. I mean, I know that's a hard job to match 1,000+ customers essentially a day. Like, that's a hard job for your offering, but. And I've got one that will get a taco salad and eat a bag of Doritos, and then they throw the rest of the thing away. So like, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I will note that obviously we have to do some mathing, right? Like, we gotta make this work in balance and anything that is above and beyond the self-balancing budget comes off ours, and we know that we were paying school debt. And I love not having such a thing as lunch debt. I also, the first and foremost thing for me is it's still not a great world out there related to prices and balancing your budget. And, especially as we look at our own budget and think about what we're gonna do with increases in income and increases in healthcare, et cetera. The main thing about CEP that's so critically important is that those families that just are suffering and kids who would not otherwise get meals. And so I know we're gonna need to make compromises, and we're gonna have to do the hard math about what works, what doesn't, and where we can save dollars. But to the extent that we can preserve and make sure that we don't have hungry kids in our schools, that to me is gotta be the number one goal. And we gotta retrofit to make it work, then we gotta retrofit it.
Yeah,
We are gonna see an expense in next month's expenditure report that's gonna be related to paying cafeteria so that they have sufficient funds to cover the payroll. Tracking that right now, I did have money that I put in a budget line in the event that we had to supplement, because we knew ahead of time that we might have to supplement that based on what we were seeing. But I'm not sure, if we don't change something, there's not enough in that wedge to cover that. So that's why we're really looking at this hard and trying to see what we can change. And I'm trying to figure out what that wedge may need to be next year if we continue down this road. Our concern is, it might be easy to say, well, we'll stop CEP next year, but how many people we already had an issue with people not paying for lunches. How much of that can be exacerbated if we say, well, we're not gonna do the free lunches anymore, even though we could? And I don't know.
like Dr. Gregg said, is there a way to extend the breakfast time? Build that into the schedule some way?
There may be, it's so hard, you have to work with the schools, I guess what I'm saying. It's easy for us to
Yeah.
kind of You know, what I mean, it has an unintended consequence sometimes in schools, so extending the time, making it readily available. We've even had programs where we actually take carts.
That's what I'm saying, take charts to the class.
That's what
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Like,
A teacher who's, you know, corralling a bunch of 8-year-olds and then all of a sudden you show up with a cart full of donuts and it can be difficult, so we're aggressively exploring all of that, because at the end of the day, like Brett said, if something doesn't change, we're gonna have to supplement this more than we planned, so
What's the February?
something's gonna change, I can't tell you. We're gonna serve more meals, we're gonna adjust the structure, we have to.
I'm not sure yet, because we have invoices in, and I mean, like I said, I know that that extended ed cafeteria payroll runs around 100,000 a month. And we have some invoices in right now that we're waiting to pay when we get our reimbursement from the state or the federal government. One of the issues that we have is, we pay, and I'm not saying not to, I'm just saying it. We pay cafeteria workers and bus drivers when we're closed for snow. You don't get reimbursed from the federal government if you don't serve meals, so you have a week's worth of payroll that you're not gonna get reimbursed for because you didn't serve meals that week. So that hits us hard in January. So just continuing to monitor all of that, and I'm not saying don't pay them, because they're our lowest paid employees, and so I definitely am sensitive to that and know that if they, for them to lose a week of pay would be significant for them. So I don't want, I'm not advocating for that, I'm just saying it's things.
So is it, obviously, this is gonna need triage and concerted effort to sort of balance out. So is this something that you can bring to us and with some regularity or cadence, just like a aggregate level view of how much we're in the red and what things that we've done to sort of like start to eliminate some of that? Just
Yeah, we'll continue. Honestly, this was more just to make you aware.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue to monitor it and we'll continue to talk about it until it's the time.
These are hard, just hard economics about.
Sure.
So I have TBD on my spreadsheet for that area, because I'm still trying to figure out where we're gonna land on that. So this next section here, sustaining current needed positions, these are all those positions that you talked about, last month with the all-in funds, that is $731,000.
So right now you have these above the line to use shared
Yes.
vernacular. So these are gonna be in whatever giant red number that you very carefully have not shown us yet at the bottom.
Can we I just wanna make sure everybody understands where we are with the 3% in the state revenue there offset. The health insurance increase, if it's 10%,
600,000.
what's that's gonna cost. The Centrix wearable work badge was our yearly subscription, if you will, for that over the 5-year period.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The raise is in yellow because you would have to do that. If you
Right.
don't do that, then they're gonna back out $993,000, which you don't want to happen. There's an option below the line to do a 6, and you would trade out the 3 for the 6, or you could trade out the 3 for the 4. But you have to do at least a 3.
Were we able to offset the 32 with the Raptor system, or is that further down?
Raptor's only about 5, I think, right? How much is Raptor? 5? Yeah, it's not much. It's not much.
But if we're fundamentally trading it out, then building in the negative is useful.
Yeah, so I could change that.
I know it's $5,000. You don't have to, don't do it now. Like,
Yeah, I was just curious. I wasn't saying
We're
let's
gonna-
manipulate.
we'll break something. Let's not do it. Not that we need to talk about today, but I was listening to the radio on the way over, maybe it was CNN, I forget what I was on. It was one of the, XM channels. And they were talking about the violence in that, or the murder in that Nashville school. And that those schools in Nashville have an AI safety thing that basically identifies weapons through cameras. And that's their like go-to for school safety. But allegedly, because it was obscured, like behind a jacket or something, the AI just didn't pick it up. And so as we think about school safety and solutions and what we need to be safe, like, I want to make sure that our collective brain trust reads something about that and why it didn't work and why it failed Nashville. And to make sure that as we think of our own policy solutions to keep our students and staff safe, that those sorts of considerations are at the forefront. I know that obviously, we got some badges here, we're talking about metal detectors, which are not foolproof either, but learning, unfortunately, from other strategies that can keep us from being on that long list or from suffering unnecessarily. So I just wanted to put it out there because it was top of mind, and I was kind of really dumbfounded by a really sophisticated, allegedly sophisticated solution that was really thwarted by just tucking a firearm underneath an article of clothing.
Or why you would put faith in AI, right? All the misconceptions that we had by that, impersonating somebody's voice on the phone, that kind of stuff. So it is the way of the future.
So next we have additional staffing needs, and some of these were ones that Dr. Gretz highlighted in his PowerPoint.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure we're all clear. Under the sustaining current positions, so that first one, there is a requirement in the Literacy Act to have one specialist for every 1,100. In 6 through 8, that would be one position. We currently are funding 1 through 5 through all in. So to sustain the 1.5, excuse me, would cost $179. The division literacy specialist, we currently have one, and it's funded by all in. I just want to make sure we're all reading that the same way.
And those amounts include all of the fringes, the health insurance, everything.
It's literally about to ask.
And
Yeah.
those are literal people.
People involved.
So, if that person's on step 25, that's what's reflected. So that is your real cost there. And those are what was embedded in the grants originally. But that's why you see kind of strange numbers here and there, because somebody might be on a family plan for insurance, and so their number's higher than someone else's.
Yeah, this is not real salary.
Yeah.
This is salary
Everything.
and benefits. Some of them watching, it's not my salary.
I know.
Division of math specialist, there's one, and it's funded by all in 60%. So that 60% of it is, okay. I just wanted to make sure we're,
And that sums to 371 and some change.
that's right.
It is the thing, it is all the green highlights in the sheet that Ms. Soares was talking about in
730,
7:30, I don't know what.
minus the bridge.
Yeah, I apologize. 731, so that is, and that right now is baked into your big scary number forthcoming.
It is,
Okay.
or 368. Okay, so these are the positions that were mentioned earlier. Some of them would be an offset, because you would be switching out one for another. But then you see kind of the costs there associated with, those positions that you were at, additional positions.
And are these the positions that Dr. Gretz is recommending that we build into this budget?
So that's a great question. That's what I wanted to segue to you. So you'll notice the first one is a director of human resources. I have put that into the draft for you to consider. I don't have all of them in there. I am putting this one in there, and I think that's a priority. I'll tell you a quick story if this is helpful. In a division I was in many years ago, we had a receptionist at one of the elementary schools who had been there for generations. She had been the front desk for people's grandparents when they were little, parents when they were little. She'd been there 50-some years. She was completely devoted to the school, loved the school, was the first one there, the last one to leave. The kid missed the bus and came back, she'd stay with them. She probably worked 80 hours a week at that school. In 2012, whatever it was, the Fair Labor Standards Act were required to maintain records about how many hours per week non-exempt employees work, and make sure if they work more than 40, they get the appropriate overtime. And so suddenly in that division, like every division, We start requiring people like that to do a timesheet. She's like, what? You have to do a timesheet. So we start getting timesheets for people. That on Monday, I get a timesheet for the week where a whole week's filled out, 8/4. Everybody knows that person's not working it. She's there at 6:30. Everything's great. And then we have a problem in another area of the division. It's a very unfortunate situation. It ends up with termination. And the way the person retaliates is to call the Office of Civil Rights in Washington and to say, they have an employee who's not exempt, who's working at such and such elementary school, and they're making her work for 8 hours. And all of a sudden, Washington DC shows up in Houston, Virginia, and camps out in the conference room for 6 months, dissecting every single document and if you have a spreadsheet that says 8 to 4, even if the person wants it to be 8 to 4, I'm telling you all that because that is just one tiny piece of personnel regulation that can have a huge impact on school division. That's just one. There are hundreds. And for us to be able to manage those appropriately, let alone just support our staff the way we are now. We have a great onboarding process, a great support process, evaluation, but we really need the dedicated support that you find anywhere else. Frankly, again, I don't mean this to be an us versus them thing, but the county. Look at how many folks are devoted to human resources in the county. I'm organization compared to us. We would really need that support. That was longer than you asked for, sorry. I guess the answer, Dr. Kelly, is yes. That is one of the positions I'm recommending. That is extra.
Is that additional staffing needs, 24 to 31, are those lines all stack ranked by priority from you, or are those just the,
No,
whatever that would be, 7-ish total positions that you think would most benefit us at this time in a perfect world?
that.
Okay.
So this is a combination of, and going back to, the schools ever just kind of lay on the table everything that they think they need. There's also a process we go through as we get feedback from the community, we get feedback from staff that falls through the cost center managers, principals come with a list. I want to make sure that you at least see what is being requested among the schools. So some of that is in here, some of that is below the line. But no, these are not rank order.
Okay.
And I think that would be difficult, but I can do that if it's helpful. We can do that if it's helpful.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if you can provide some sense of, intensity or need, ultimately, it's gonna be up to this board to rank them and then decide what's above and what's below the line,
Yeah,
but,
So these first, lines 24 to 29, those are all like leadership positions. Line 30 is a request that came from the high school, probably shouldn't like that, it's high school.
that's been on here.
They have, most of their counselors are 11 and they have one 12-month counselor, but they have one that's a 10-month counselor and they're asking to be that 11. And then we've heard probably in every single school, in every single meeting about needing additional behavioral support. And this would add an additional behavior specialist to the cadre of people that we have.
And I don't want to jump around too much. I do want to be clear in our conversation with the schools and the leadership, and we now have a mental health team that we didn't have before. Necessarily, we had people, but now we have a very cohesive team in the department. There's a well-articulated plan that they have for how to address a lot of the needs that are level. The additional behavior specialist, and we have one right now, as part of this plan, I'm confident, and I think as a team, we are confident, would address a lot of the needs that we're seeing across the schools.
but I would have to imagine that, so in a world in which it's all new net revenue or new demands, that is this second tier underneath keeping existing staff
Yes,
positions? So this is
Absolutely.
the and, but after, if we're able to secure the remaining positions.
absolutely, absolutely. But what the point I wanted to make is that there's a plan and there's, I think, expert impact brought to that plan. And proven impact that we've seen from the team now. There is an outcry from the schools though, and I don't want to overstate this. I'm not calling it a disconnect. I'm just simply saying, if I'm in a classroom and I'm among other classrooms and I've got runners and biters and people throwing desks and, this may not feel like it's going to address that. I might want a team of instructional assistants because I just need bodies, right? And so I just want to make sure that's all on the table. I do think that there's communication among the schools and this team, and we've scrutinized that. And I do think that this would go, if we're going to do something, I think this is the thing to do. But I think the schools would support this and would also love to have you.
Ms. Grasser, or Mrs. Grasser, whichever you prefer. Could you highlight from 160 down to 112, 620? Is that 590-ish thousand?
93.
Okay. For sense of scale.
So if I could give you some commentary about the first ones. If you go to line 27, that's the position that we need to replace. So we don't need to go back and rehash all this, but you've seen kind of the progression and development over the past 15 years of how that has been structured. You've got executive level leadership in finance and instruction with maybe I'll say emphasis on secondary that we need to recoup when that position walks out the door. So the director of finance position, when we talk about like structuring these in terms of priority, that's not even a question. That's like, going back to the bike race, without the director of finance, we don't have a front wheel. So we got to do that, right?
So what
And
is
there-
zero?
Well, so I'm gonna get to that. Let me say all of this.
Sorry,
and I think it'll-
I didn't
That's
mean to
okay.
interrupt you.
No, that's okay. We've got that position. So we hired director of finance to recoup the finance leadership. If you go back up to the top, human resources, the next one, if we were to carve out a position, and I'm suggesting a coordinator level position that could provide leadership in alternative education, student services, specific boots on the ground leadership at Abrams, and free up a current position that we have, where we have a lot of, I don't think the person would mind, because we've had a lot of conversation about it, a lot of firepower related to data, student achievement data, helping teachers understand how to aggregate, analyze, and apply that data to make meaningful change in classrooms, would free that position up to be what it really is intended. So I'm putting that there.
Okay, so
The communications officer, we've talked about that. I'm starting with a 10-month teacher contract. I think there are creative ways we can do that. I think, in some divisions, you can find that maybe at a more robust, maybe a coordinator level, but I even think that could even be, we could even accomplish a lot of what we're saying we aren't able to do now with part of a teacher contract, with the right person that even just has a section freed up to be able to do some of that work if they have the right skills. Skip down under director of finance. With the coordinator of secondary instruction, we're recouping the executive, director level leadership and instruction, the special bent, if you will, towards secondary, and the ability in that, because you almost have to go back to my slide where I listed all the duties, but somebody that could support the instructional leadership that we currently have in place. Right now, it's Gemma. not to put names to people, but just so we have clear, what's going on. And could bring up some of that support that we're saying that we lost back in 2011, that we'd like to have in interdisciplinary work. Help with, based on what we're getting now out of literacy and math specialists, help with gifted education, help with social studies and science. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, or at least gives you a little more context, Dr. Kelly. The reason those are zero is financially speaking.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you, and maybe it's in some of this, but can we make sure that we have this is what the leadership structure looks like today, and this is what the interim leadership structure would look like if we were to implement these particular positions? I would like to have that graphic and flow chart for the supers anytime we're talking about leadership structure.
And one reason that we don't have that right now is that I'm assuming that through this exercise, there is a possibility that there could be sentiment on the board to bring some of the things that are now below the line above the line, or vice versa. So, but once we kind of land at something, for sure.
Sure, yeah, we gotta see the big scary number first.
Thank you.
This is useful, and so the coordinator of alternative ed and student services that doesn't create redundancies. It means that we're able to utilize our talent better. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And their duties that I'm trying to display are their own separate departments of other divisions. They're right now just kind of tacked on to other people who are already doing human resources, capital planning, maintenance.
The number of jobs half the people in this room do are just stupid, to be honest. We love you. It's amazing. We shouldn't ask you all to wear 6 hats and expect you to nail every single one of those jobs. It's just unfair.
So in the next line, you have athletics, the cost of officials, the cost of deputies, and some of the entry fees for the invitationals has gone up substantially in the last couple of years. And so we are going to have to add funding to that line to continue to be able to fund that as well. And the cost of officials, we just don't have any control over that. It's set, and you could change for some of the sports company you have, but in essence, it's a set fee.
And I don't know if everybody's understands this, but those rates are, the officials don't come in and say, here's what I charge to be a coach. The BHSL partners with whatever group is offering that, and they establish those rates on behalf of those. We don't have control over that, and either do they.
I mean, does having our new glorious track open up opportunities for us to host more things and recoup some money, like have some revenue go this way?
You can see that as free.
How about our gym at the high school? How, and this might be a completely separate conversation, but with how big AAU tournaments are with basketball, I could be wrong, never attended an AAU tournament just as a spectator in Fluvanna County, but we have got at least 3 courts, but 4 that you could realistically use.
What's the acronym? AAU?
I don't even know. I'll save my take on AAU for a different time, but it's a big moneymaker. It's basically travel.
It's travel.
Travel.
Okay. That's
Not
what I'm-
unaffiliated to Fluvanna County Public Schools, but we've got a lot of kids in the county that play it. We leave the county to go play AAU instead of bringing them here. It just might be food for thought for a separate conversation on how we start making money off of that beautiful facility over there. And help bring some money in for
We
athletics.
hosted something a few years ago, and we did learn that, it increased your security needs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it does. There's a cost with it, but
Yeah,
if they're not coming to Fluvanna, they're going somewhere else, and there's a lot of money that, again, this is a board of supervisors and us conversation. Restaurants are now getting money, everything. Concessions are getting money. I mean, these things are massive. Hotels are getting money, like, so it's a big one.
Does the revenue from the games, the gate, does that go against those fees too, or? So we're just not, we're just not getting revenue like we used to?
Invitational where we charge teams to come in, then they actually use the funds they collect from that to pay for the officials. The division's not paying for those. So they pay for the the officials, whatever they need to manage that particular tournament. But if it's a regular, VHSL event, then the school division pays for all the officials and the security and all that.
But is our sports revenue down or about the same?
I can't speak to that because that's funded through the activity funds at the high school, but I can find out and let you know.
I mean, this certainly suggests that we have increased cost in
Yes.
comparison to revenue now
Yes,
of 30,000, right?
well, we don't, the revenue that we get from tickets, those are maintained at the activity fund level in the school. That's not part of our budget.
But we just have straight up more demand, more fiscal need in order to support the activities that are going.
Because of these increases.
And we are, every year getting more activities too.
So I put these above the line, but then I'm not sure that we're.
Before we move on, just real quickly, because this board has talked about this would be the appropriate place to at least start thinking about the desire to, so the way it works is when we host an event, the tickets from the gate go into a general fund. Right? Teams are allowed to make revenue by manning the concession stand, for example. That's where they get revenue out of that event. They do not get the revenue from the tickets. So the football game was widely attended, more revenue comes in. Football team doesn't get that. They get whatever comes from
Concession stand.
concession stand, and it's not even the amount of sales. There is a set amount that they are paid to do that. And all the teams get that. The teams are all on a rotation schedule, right, with their equipment and
Uniforms.
uniforms. And it is completely equitable on all the teams. They all get the same thing. The extent to which teams are able to get more revenue than what I have just said is through the fundraising that they do. Whatever they sell, they can go out to a 5K, make money. Some do more than others. The reason I'm telling you this is that when I do think there's a perception, I've tried to address it through communication in the community. It's still public. There's a perception that teams are getting less or more from us, which is not true. And there's a perception that teams are getting more or less because they get more from the game and they're not getting anything. Except that if a team has a unique need, they can go to the athletic director and say, I've got a unique need. This soccer ball broke, whatever it is. You can take the general fund and support it. If we're hosting an event that is a district tournament, regional tournament, state tournament, we don't get any of that. All goes to VHSL.
They do pay for, the VHSL pays for the official, the
Yeah.
people who run the event, there's no cost to us.
It's a net, but
Yeah.
my point is that revenue doesn't come.
But they don't pay for security,
Yeah, they do.
but then,
The reason I'm bringing it up now is because we had talked about the extent to which we would want to try to host maybe either lower the cost of attending for students, for parents, to have a special night where maybe we really want to get everybody out for this event or to see the band do something at this. And we're going to say like, tonight it's free. Bring your family, bring your aunts, bring your uncles. That's going to change this. Because there's not like a big surplus that's being sat on, we can pull from to do things like that. We have to increase that in order to be able to do attention.
Can we find, and being realistic, this is also because I'm a diehard sports guy, but I'm also a diehard community at sporting events, but also transcends into choir band, things like that, since it's more of an activities, not just athletics.
Sure.
Could we ballpark a number? I don't even think I could put it in this, just so everybody knows where I stand. Of what it would cost the schools to let everybody, students only, in for free to every event. Parents love you, but y'all can pay. But like to get the students in, and the reason why I say that is it kills me when I see and I attend more athletic events than I do others. It kills me to see the stands in Fluvanna County. But when it costs a family of four, nearly $40 to get into a game, they're not gonna. Now, I think we have things like boosters, and I love that that started back up again at the height. Like, there's things like that that I think we can tap into, but I would love to see if we go free on tickets for 18 and under, you know, whatever that qualification is, what does that cost us? So we can then go say, we gotta go find $50,000. And if we find it, our stands are probably gonna be a lot more crowded.
I think the trick is you have to know how many students you have now that are paying. And that would be the tricky part.
But we have the season passes and stuff, like, I mean, as best we can based on current revenue coming in.
We talked about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we can, I don't think we'll be able to come in here with exactly 10.
Yeah, and it's like, I see the community nights, like, we go to the high school and every single year when they let in rec basketball. And there might be 25 kids, 30 kids that are out on the court, but that's 25 to 30 families that attended that game. And we've done that for 3 or 4 years. That's a spike night for high school basketball, girls and boys, nearly every single time. And so I don't even know if this directly impacts our students, but it definitely impacts them and the community to come in. And like, I've made this very clear over the year. That's our pipeline for our schools, sports and students, to see what you have to look forward to. And then you're a K-12, Fluco, not a K-8. You go somewhere else for 9 to 12 because
Right.
there's another option for it, you know, like
It
it's.
really impacts at the younger grade level
Mhm.
and those that aren't involved. The kids that are involved get free. Your middle school kids, your elementary kids, they don't. And they can't come unless they're here.
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm sure there's, I don't want to speak for y'all, y'all wanted our best estimate at how much it would cost to 18 under, open the door. I'm saying it was 3.
And yeah, and again, I just want to make clear, I'm not recommending that goes in here because I think there's way more important things than that, but that's an important one from a community building standpoint.
Yeah, I'd like to know the number and then we can put it on our roadmap.
Mhm.
Not
So one of the requests we get is to add substitute bus drivers. I'll just be honest, I'm a little bit torn on this. It would cost about $38,000 to add another bus driver. That includes all the fringes and everything. The thought is that you would have a permanent sub driver, but my concern with that is what happens with that driver when there's not a route to cover. Now I know that, you know, we frequently have routes to cover, but I don't know how many times you would have drivers that didn't have a route.
Yeah.
Um,
Could we get updated information from the transportation department on average, on a given average day, how many bus drivers are not behind the wheel? Last year it was like 3.5. I don't want to like exaggerate, but like,
Yeah.
from what I remember, it was like 2 to 6 on a daily basis. And like, if that's still the case, then like having a sub and having to figure out what to do with a sub on a day where there's perfect attendance is like kind of small potatoes versus 6 people, not like, we got 6 double runs. Or we got, you know, our director, behind the wheel. I'd love to know what the average absentee rate is behind the wheel, not for punishment. People need time. We don't want them here sick. If you need your time, you gotta take it, but like, that'll help me understand the demand side. Or rather the supply side of the drivers and whether or not a sub is getting affected.
But couldn't the sub, if it's no route, then be a bus aid?
you could do that. The rate you pay a bus aid is quite a bit less than you pay a driver. That's the cost of 4 bus aids.
But if he's worried about if he has nothing to do, he can easily go be a
I'm
bus aid
confident
somewhere.
there's office work to be had. I mean, the amount of time that I waited at Miss Marsh through a windshield is astronomical.
Even if it's less pay, at least he'll be
Yeah.
doing
that-
something.
That 38,150 is just for one,
Yeah.
so depending on how many you add there, that number's gonna change.
And then the 50K on the bus aids, that is for 4 or for 1,
That is for 4.
that is for 4. And so that means it's And does that assume that they're on a bus every day, every run?
Yes,
That's.
it's an hourly rate that bus aides are paid, and it's just that amount of time that they're actually physically on the bus. Bus drivers have built into their contracts time to do a pre-check and a post-check on their bus and fuel their bus. So that's not built in for bus aides, it's just a flat hourly rate that we pay for the time that they're on the bus.
We're gonna have to balance it against all the other things above, but it's a small number for 4 staff.
And you know, we have, you're gonna ask me, right, is it 69? Don,
Yes, ma'am.
the number of routes,
67 approximately.
And how many bus aides do we currently have?
we only have a few, we're required to have them on the special ed buses, and right now, those are the only buses that they're on.
That's what I figured the answer was, but might as well ask it.
There is a request from technology to increase support for cybersecurity. I don't need to tell you that this is really picking up in the last few years. And so, I think they put in their budget 50 to 100,000, so 50,000 here. So,
And there was a, Mr. Giffords here, if you wanna, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but I mean, there was a consulting group that worked with a consortium of technology departments to kind of audit the security and make recommendations as to what you need to do to balance what's forthcoming. So that's largely where this came from those recommendations, and you gave us so much more detail that I'm happy to share with you. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that's very good.
Okay.
School divisions have a lot of information, and that is very valuable. And so the more we can keep that information secure, the better.
I'm kind of shocked by how few ransomware, instances we've had in at least public education institutions. There's been a handful of colleges that got hit and tons of big tech because human error and social engineering, but 50,000 is a lot less than what one might have to pay and then maybe to get access back. So
Oh, King and Queen County, the year I came here was ransom. It was millions.
did they ultimately gain control back over their information?
They did. But they had to work with their liability provider, and that changed a lot of what they were doing. Do you remember that? Okay.
we do work real closely with our insurance provider. We have cybersecurity insurance and are built into our policies. I'm gonna make a plug for the finance office. We are very fortunate that we have several people that have either worked in lawyers' offices or worked in banking, and they have that background to really put their radar up when they see something that's out of whack. We currently participate in positive pay, which means when we write our accounts payable checks, we upload a file to the bank and we say we have check number 2 and it is for $250 and it's made out to this person. And then the county goes in and approves all of those checks as they come through. I think over the last couple of months, we've had 2 or 3 where someone, don't know who, got a check, altered it, and tried to deposit it into their account. And it's only because we do positive pay that it stopped that check from being able to go through. But that's, now that you can do all these mobile deposits, people are just taking a picture of a check and then trying to use it later on. We've had some instances where we've gotten, click this link to pay your bill. We get those sometimes.
I got 3 on my phone.
Yeah.
In here.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not exaggerating.
and there was a school division in the state that was putting in a turf field and they got an electronic invoice and they paid it. It wasn't from the company that was doing the field and it was like a $500,000 payment and it's gone. So, what Josh does, what our team does, I mean, they are really, it's a lot behind the scenes that you don't realize is going on to keep everything secure, and I really applaud them for doing that, and appreciate the partnership we have with the treasurer's office, because they've really been great with us, and kind of giving us the heads up when they see things as well.
Does the state or the county have any kind of cybersecurity options that we can tap into? Like, to me, knowing cybersecurity is only gonna get bigger and bigger and more expensive, like, is the state considering saying, hey, as the state, we are now providing this to the schools, like they're paying for contractors to manage, it's a huge contract probably, but to manage that, or does Fluvanna itself have any kind of county cybersecurity that we could piggyback onto?
I'll defer to
So the
you.
federal government has released funding to the states to develop sort of action plans. And so the work that we just did to do sort of the audit was done for any school division that applied for it. It was a free grant that you could get, and then they would have these contractors come in and kind of do sort of pen testing, doing different things to see, okay, what are you doing well? Where are your security holes? Here's sort of your priorities. And so then, that information has been shared, and so now we can go back to the state and look and see, so that there's an organization called EDA, and that offers state contracts that you can sort of use like a cooperative purchasing vehicle to give better or better priced products and more reasonable price, you know, as well as that could be materials, it could be services, it could be whatever a division needs, but it's based on your need.
Right.
So we're in a pretty good place, but there's certain things we need to do better on. So one thing would be like identity protection, that would be like user accounts. Or like just our inventory practices, we're not very good about knowing everything that's out there in real time. We know what we distribute, but we don't know what people bring in. And so there's things, the tools that we can use to identify that stuff. And so though there are solutions that you can purchase through savings that help. So that's what this funding is for, is to leverage sort of that federal through the state sort of grant program that said, okay, these are the things you gotta focus on. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I don't know if VDOE like had a contract with a cybersecurity company to provide it for the state or something, I mean, huge, but.
They kind of share with us what they have done, but they let the locality kind of decide what's best. for
Yeah.
them.
And honestly, so many of their systems, even VRS, and the system we use for state reporting, it's so antiquated. It's not even funny. Go into their system and upload these files.
A lot of universities, so for example, UVA, or VCU, they also have cooperative purchasing agreements because they've already done a lot of this stuff. So it's just a matter of knowing they exist, finding them, and you can sort of leverage those as well. But that usually comes through a consultation. Usually companies will give you a free consultation. Say, hey, I'm looking for this solution. And say, oh, UVA has already done this. This is what they've done. This is what you've done. Take it back.
So I don't have anything built in for offsets right now. And
Nothing.
you're at an additional local funding. So let's talk about what's not above the line.
Well, and before we leave the offsets conversation, we look every year at that. For the past 3 years, we've decreased all of our subscriptions, a lot of our instructional materials. We've decreased teaching positions last year. We decreased the funding that we had towards SAT testing, PSAT testing.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of emails about that.
It's
Sure.
on the below line.
It's all good.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, I was going through my email this morning and replying to them, and there's 3 or 4 related to PSAT and SATs.
Yeah, and I don't throw this out frivolously. I'm truly saying, I feel like every year we have really rolled up our sleeves and tried to see what are the things that we can ask folks to do now? What are the things we can decrease? I'm open to any feedback here. I don't know what else to recommend.
One thing I don't have in here, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night and have these crazy thoughts. I don't have any increases in here for fuel costs. I mean, I'm anticipating that fuel costs are gonna remain steady or go down. Hopefully that comes to fruition. I don't have an increase in there.
Okay. Yeah.
So these compensations are just the different, how much the different scenarios of compensation cost. We'll just keep an eye on the General Assembly. Like I said, that 3 could become 4, or they could add in a 1% bonus. I've already computed the cost of doing those. If you choose to do that.
And so this is cumulative, not the additional expense.
Well, the compensation are orders, so you would switch out your 3 for the 6.
And do you have in column C, the state proportion?
The state portion right now, all I have is that $994,000.
Gotcha. So this is our portion of it, like,
Yeah, so the 6, for example, 2 months ago, we revisited the salary study, we updated it with new figures and just kind of modeled, having no idea what, at that time, the state was gonna do, and even less idea what other divisions were gonna do, that if we wanted to try to maintain a competitive position, meaning stay, not last, we thought that it could require a 6. That's where the 6 is coming from.
so that's another 1 point something
Not-
million on top of the 3.
Well, that's the problem that we have when you're looking at the template, and I struggle with how to explain this. They put $1 million in there for 3%. That, I'm not disputing that, but they didn't give you an additional $1 million. They basically traded out something else and gave you $1 million. So at the end of the day, it's costing you $1 million because you don't have,
So that was my question. When we read 196, basically.
yeah.
That is regardless of us getting 993 in the current proposal, that's still our cost.
Yes.
Okay, that, I just wanted to double check. There wasn't anything.
To do everything that we include.
Right.
Not that this makes any of our conversations easier. I will note that it is a reassessment year, and what I heard going down the hill on Wednesday night is that the average increase in property values was asinine. I think they said it was between 25 and 30%. So to be clear, that is the assessed value of homes. It doesn't mean this is not the board to look for your tax rates. That said, it doesn't mean that your taxes are going up 25 to 30. It means that when inspectors look at your homes and they don't peer in your windows and they don't look inside your home, they are suggesting that the comps are 25 and 30% higher than they were 2 years ago when they did the last assessment. And so that, I don't know if you would consider that a good assessment year, or if that's just an assessment year. But ultimately, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that this supers board is gonna have to like grapple with is, what is an equalized rate, and is that desirable? But certainly the homes in the county are seeing, so I think it was 25. The thing that blew my mind is they're saying that the homes that are 1,600 square feet and under, the smaller homes in the county, 30 to 35% increases in their like value. And it's one of those things that, it's just a number that is difficult to like kind of compare and/or compare to reality. But there is certainly that bit of information in the other board's puzzle. I spent a lot of time trying not to think about their decisions and look at the spreadsheet, but.
So if they change that compensation to a 4, the General Assembly does that, they're gonna add additional money to the template to make that on their side. So it's difficult for me to say what that number would be, but they will add additional funds to help pay for that, but it won't be 100% on the side. The other thing, and this is not a political statement, but just facts. There are many things built into the governor's budget that may not make it through General Assembly. And some of those things are very expensive things that are hitting into the surplus. The elimination of the car tax is huge. There's vouchers in there for private school that may or may not make it through General Assembly. There's the other big one I was thinking of, lab schools. They're back and forth about whether they would fund those. So depending on what the General Assembly does, we could see a very different template when we get the House and Senate templates in the next couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I believe you're going to have to adopt a budget before you even see what the House and Senate are recommending in their budgets. Even though this is not supposed to be a long budget cycle, and we typically don't get those until the third or fourth week in February.
Do we even like ballpark to like the nearest 100,000? Do we remember what the ask was that was granted a few years ago that was like the big one?
1.7.
1/7.
So 1.7 was like
No,
the,
ask was 2.
Oh, the ask was like 2 something. What we got was about 1.7.
and that was the one that helped us give.
The raises
Yeah, and this is showing sort of backsliding, right? This is
and the
the
mental
state
health
not
position.
kind of keeping up with increased cost and because I only focus on schools and I largely only focus on Fluvanna. I don't pay attention to everything that goes through Richmond. Could somebody tell me what the current proposal is related to car tax?
To eliminate the car tax for, I think it's just for, it's an income level, but it would eliminate the car tax, which would greatly decrease state revenue.
You mean how much it is?
No, just, and that's on sales or that's on like
No, the annual car tax.
the annual car tax? Okay,
And the state has record revenue surpluses, but everybody seems to be reluctant, and I'm not, again, not advocating one or another, but they seem to be reluctant to put those into recurring costs because they're still concerned that something could happen with the economy and then what would happen if that did.
yeah, I hate to invest in schools when you can.
So just factual data, in fiscal 24, the adopted budget that assumed an increase, the actual increase was 1.2 billion more than what the budget assumed. So it's a 17.4% increase in the general.
And it might be good for us to sell everything. Roger Ball.
That's what it is.
Yeah, he does, when we go to our state conference every year, he does a presentation, just forecasting and talks about state revenue and what the state picture looks like and the funding for education. We can share that with you, and there's some good information there. There's a lot of information in there, but it is
Put it up.
compelling, yeah. Sure. Well, let's get through this and see. So these were other things that were not above the line, so to speak, and I'm not saying that people wouldn't need them to be important, because we did hear these requests. One of the things we talked about was the ideal or the support positions. If we did have to fund all of the, what's recommended now before the General Assembly in terms of math requirements for math specialists and interventionists, that would cost almost another 400,000.
So that's not a choice we would have.
No. It is a phase in over several years, and so it's not something we are gonna have to do next year. I think the first year it hits you is fiscal year 27, but,
So that was my question with that, right? And I don't wanna go into the whole conversation about grant money, local money, that kind of stuff, but we know that come FY 28, we need $390,000.
Yeah.
If it changes,
Right now, they're hard.
yeah. If it goes through, we will.
okay,
And now they'll fund a portion of that. Because typically that would be something that would be funded in your template, but it would only be a portion of it. It's not gonna be 100%.
yeah, I was just thinking of like something
Yeah.
should it go through, we know 100%, we've got more money for something that we're already getting.
Yeah.
That we need to fund in 3 years,
Yeah.
2 years.
And then, and I always try to look at the bills that are going before the general assembly. It can get really overwhelming, but to just look at what's being proposed for education. Because it might not go through the first year, but then you start to see where there's a pattern where the same kind of bill comes up and then it may go through. And so you're just kind of watching like, what's the temperature on this? How's it trending? And that's one that I think is probably going to get some traction. We talked about, we had on our spreadsheet, the ideal support positions and what that would look like, and that costs another 1.1 million to implement that. That's in addition to what you have up there, and your all-in funded positions. We have a lot of requests for additional speech pathologists. We do have an open position right now that we're working on. I've sort of heard the request regarding an additional nurse at Central. The middle school requested a dean of students. This was on our list last year, the change in contracts for the Carriesburg registrar and for the CTE specialist at the high school. There's a request for an additional, assistant coaches in the number of sports. The total request was 10, and they're at $21.50 each for assistant coaches.
Yeah, I've got a spreadsheet that we can share, and we'll go deeper there, I can show you the different programs, so you can see where they are, and the ratios and try to.
Is that just athletics or does it include activities?
Just that one.
That is just,
I know I received an email from a student recently about, the arts program and wanting to do larger scale performances that would require more staff. You know,
Yeah.
with a musical, you got
Yeah.
a band, you got a choir, you have drama. If they're not stipend, it's not happening.
Yes.
Is the 10 assistant coaches? May I ask who made that request? Is that coming from like, we just want 3 coaches per 10 athletes ratio kind of thing? Or is that head coaches being like, I need more help?
It's the latter, but it's filtered through a vision of the whole program, trying to make it equitable in terms of how different programs will be supported.
So
As you know, the way we do this, just keep this in mind. And I've been real honest that I'm not crazy about this, but give the program, so if you, for example, if we were to do this, then let's say field hockey will get another additional coach. That means we are providing the funding to that program. Now, that head coach can take that funding for that position and hire 4.
Right.
And a 4th of that. And then another program could take that and hire the 1. And then you got 4 people making a 4th of what that 1 is making.
But we're hearing a need from head coaches saying, may I ask why?
Wow, we're gonna need.
Okay, why, like, let's take basketball, for example. You put more than 3, 4 coaches on a roster, I question why you need that 4th, 5th
And
assistant coach.
they're not one.
No, I know, I'm just, basketball, what I'm passionate about, so I know I can speak on how many coaches you need or don't need. Now, if we have,
Probably like lacrosse, probably.
yeah, programs with only 1 coach, then I can see that.
Soccer, probably.
those were ones that we added last. And so when we added the programs, we just put like,
2 coaches per.
Yeah, and then now they've got more participation, they're seeing that they need more assistance with that.
So these are the ones that are truly lacking in personnel on the coaching staff then?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like lacrosse.
I mean,
It's
so,
like
yeah,
40
spring-
participants, only 2 coaches per level.
Spring track.
Yeah.
They've got all the different events. You got 90-some kids,
Yeah,
Right.
2 people.
yeah.
So this is one of those things that, like, I don't love our system either. Kind of like, it's fine. Like, y'all can, James-Kelly at apps.fluco.org. Don't forget the second E. I'll take all your hate mail. I don't love our system and the way that we fund our coaches. I think we should quantify the need of that many coaches and that everybody should get the same stipend or stipend that is commensurate with their work. We ain't gonna do it this budget season. I mean, I'm staring at 3.1 and all this is below the line. But like, if we want to have a roadmap and a plan for how we want to like proceed and build and professionalize our division, that should go on the list. Like, I get it, and I wanna respect autonomy, and I wanna thank our head coaches for the job they do, but at the end of the day, and people should be paid none of this is, none of this is profitable, right? You're just putting in way more hours than you're ever gonna get a check for and all that, but I feel like we should probably professionalize and standardize this, and that if others agree, then we should think about putting it on the roadmap, because this ain't the year to do it financially. It's gonna cost more to do it right.
The other request that we had was, for a administrative assistant for the activities director. That request we received several times.
And that's modeled in other divisions as well.
I would say every school has it. Several. You know,
The
Most
PSAT
schools have a
and SAT
secretary.
testing, we've heard about that, we would estimate to reinstate that would be about $24,000. That one is tricky because we had a decline in the number of kids taking the SAT and SAT this year. Some of that may be financial, some of that is because we're hearing that some of the schools are test optional, so kids are choosing not to. It's probably a little bit of both. I'm hearing the pendulum swinging back towards requiring testing. So that does vary. My concern has always been that PSAT is a good practice for the SAT, and there's targeted free intervention you can participate in if you want to work on your SAT score after you take the PSAT. The other thing is in schools in Virginia, you do not take a time test until you hit this one. And I don't care how brilliant you are, if you're not used to taking a time test, you're going to struggle when you're told you have to do this in 30 minutes. So, this is one that I advocate for, but I understand we have limited resources.
I don't love all of his analysis, and in fact, I found some of his books just to be cherry picked nonsense, but there is a very good podcast from Malcolm Gladwell as it relates to standardized testing and the American, yeah, and if you've heard it, it's, you know, Malcolm Gladwell's standard deviations above the rest of us probably on intellect, or at least capacity, and taking a Canadian, I think, and shoving an American time test down their throat it's a learned behavior. It is a skill that you develop. It is not an actual measure of your intellect or capacity. And does that 24,000, is that universally free for all the students who want to take it? Is that just some financial aid? Some, I remember we
That
had,
would be what we would anticipate it would cost if we paid for everyone to take.
I do remember that there was a bit of a issue with the way that we implemented discounts on PSAT or SAT last year or the year before, in that rather than providing specific aid to students with need, it was a universal discount for all students. So it wasn't really need-based, applied.
We paid for everyone.
There was a year
We
where,
did this year.
was it this year? I'm trying to, we're in the school together. Was it, so it's this year. So like, sometimes even best intents, the programs that are aimed at providing, closing the gaps for students without, don't.
I don't think it wasn't something that we were implementing. It was something that the college board has specific rules about when you can use a fee waiver, when you can use a reduction.
Yeah, I'm not assigning blame, I'm
Right, I just want to
articulating.
clarify that.
I have to go back and read this, but.
It was misplotted. I wasn't trying to name names, but obviously we're a small division and we only have so many testing, so. I want to make sure that we are thoughtful about it, and that if we're putting money up, that it takes care of and doesn't just like. Take a couple of percentage points off a family who just like can't afford it.
Well, this is an estimate based on what we spent when we did offer it to everyone. So I'm not gonna say that it's exact, but that would be my estimate.
Sure.
I had Fuel Master on the request last year. I put it back up here. I'm just gonna tell you, I think you're on a limited timetable on how long that system's gonna continue to work.
So is Fuel Master the new system, or is this abandoned?
No, we currently use Fuel Master, and I think we need to upgrade, and this is
This is the cost to move to a new system.
yes.
So they have a cloud-based system. Currently, we have a local server that the schools provide. But the county also uses the fuel system. And what happens is, the school division has to then sort of itemize how much usage did each department of the county use and then invoice them so that they can reimburse this. And it's also on the transportation side, we have to provide these little, they're called pro keys to each department of the county. Now, every deputy gets one, every emergency services department employee gets one, so that they can fuel up the, the ambulance, the whatever, you name it, every county vehicle, an excavator, a lawnmower, so. This would allow us to go to a cloud-based system, and then each entity would have their own way of going in and managing their portion of.
Problem that we have is if the system goes down, but you still need to get gas, then we need to let you get gas, because we want you to fill up your police car, but it's not always, we're not always able to track that the way we need to be.
It is on generator now, I forget when they just did that a year or two ago. Which helps, but just because of the nature of the Dominion power, they go down a lot. So there is sort of this.
So this is one that, like, if we're wasting a bunch of staff hours on, and or this is unsustainable, and it's a shared expense with the county, that like, I would put above the line, not to have it eat into things that we need for students, but also, like, if it's unsustainable and this is the fix to eliminate a bunch of staff time waste that can be spent on other things, and maybe this is something that we think about either now or on our 3-year roadmap.
There's definitely other things to consider. The current system is not being supported, so there's an likely server. And we can run it until the software of the server dies, but at some point, you can go back. And the other thing to consider is there may come a time where the county wants to add another fuel pump. And there's been talk, we'll put it at the high school, sort of on the bus ramp side, and if you sort of enter in and you make it right, we talk about putting it there. Well, this system would allow it, whereas the current system would not.
And we may have to do an additional or a new fuel pump because there's issues where the current one is, it's just age.
I assume it can, so I don't think we've talked about, this can't qualify for CIP, can it?
It could. I think the frustrating thing with Fuel Master, with fuel billing and with the gas pumps is I don't know how we got in the business of being in charge of all the county's fuel.
Sounds like a great program for the county to take over.
I get, we have a lot of buses and
We'll pay
cars,
more
don't get me
for it.
wrong, but we do it.
The administration.
all in-
That's what I was thinking too. I can't think of this. Here's your interest for our time.
Ms. Marsh did a great job when she came in, cleaning that up, and there were a lot of things that were found, so the county is appreciative. It was a collaborative partnership to put in the generator. Our maintenance team, it's a good partnership that we do have with the county. For example, when the snow was coming in, the emergencies of the end of the weekend, we worked with, Travis and his crew worked with that to keep it clean. But yes, it is slowly starting to balance out. We still take the brunt of it, but it would be very helpful. 30,000 is under the CIP limit.
Okay.
So it could be looked at as a CRM, possibly, if they would approve that. Unless we added something onto the Fuel Master. I'm not suggesting we add it on to make it more money to reach that threshold. I'm just saying we have to look at that.
I mean, could they just add it to the CIP when they decide to add another pump?
This is more of a software sort of thing.
This is like an annual recurring.
There's
cost for it.
It's very small. This
Yeah,
would be.
So this is just the cost to upgrade at one time?
yeah.
Yes.
And when we pay for the, recurring costs or the maintenance that goes on the pump, we do split it between those departments. We don't just assume all that cost. I get it's all county money, but
Right.
Let's be honest with you, I mean, I had it on there 1 year for a carryover, and I was like, please, can we have this, because we need it, and they were like, no, and I'm like, is your gas too?
That's right, to me, this seems, not to go down that whole road again, but very population study-esque of like, everybody's benefiting from it, yet it's on the school's plate to do, especially if we're providing manpower and fuel costs to shovel snow,
Yeah.
things like that, that we're not getting paid for.
So the under potential offsets, I put on there, you could back off about $110,000 in the health insurance increase if you pass part of the 10% onto the employees. I'm not advocating for that, I'm just letting you know what that cost could be. If you do have the appetite to do something different with that, then we could cost out potentially the percentage change, but that is a ton of work. So I will do that if that's something that you're interested in, but if you're not, then I'll work that out.
I'm gonna say something shocking here. At 3.1, I'm real tempted to zero that line out. And this is the first time I'll say that we just can't continue to eat all the insurance costs. And at some point, things gotta change, and at 3.1, I don't know how we leave 600,000 in there, to be honest. And I did a little math real quick on, I just used a salary of 55,000. I don't have our scales in front of us. I think last year it was 53,000 starting teacher. But, so I use 55,000 as a number that somebody makes income wise. And a 3% increase is 1,650. And a 10% on the year, and a 10% increase in healthcare is 1,100. Or is 1,320 rather, on the year. And so like, to the extent that if we don't pass it through, and a person who makes 55,000, if they got a family plan, their net take home, or their net income increase is really $330 in the year. If we give 3% and then we don't cover any of the insurance, but
I do want to go back and clarify something, the employee payment on a family plan is $877.
was over $1,000 in previous years.
I'm almost positive I was paying over $1,000.
I thought it was 11.
Check, but this is what I have on my rate.
1080,
Yeah.
something.
And I checked the date, because I'm like, maybe I'm on the date. I'll double check it.
Or maybe those were no, I swear we were over
The
1,000.
employer side is $1,900.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were ballpark
I
on 1,100 or
thought
something.
we were ballparking
Let me
1100.
research that again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you saying you recommend covering the increase or
I'm not.
passing someone to the staff?
I'm looking at these positions that ultimately our kids are gonna suffer if we remove.
Yeah, okay,
As much as I want to cover these things and to insulate our staff and to acknowledge that when you choose a job in public service, that the benefits are supposed to cover some of this. And we just can't do it. I don't know how we can ask for the 3.1 or whatever it turns out to be. But unless the county fully funded it, I don't know how we leave that 600,000 in there.
And yes, right, I'll save my other thought for a different day, because it is more than insurance. I agree with what you're saying. I would also love to see, just because I don't really know if there has been a deep rational explanation as to why we don't really dive into combining insurance with the county to maybe offset this. Even though I know it means their rates may go up, I get it, but to me, I don't know, I just don't know if I've heard one, so if we can revisit it or get one today, I'm.
Well, I can speak to the issue in the work session we attended with the county. It was kind of coalesced that Eric and I, or Mr. Dahl and I, would put a committee together to study that.
Hmm.
And I reached out to him about that, and we're still trying to work.
Okay,
So I do think the deep dive is gonna happen.
okay,
I think the reason it hasn't happened in the past is because three things. Their rate structure is really, really favorable for the employees. Meaning the employer, county, pays a lot towards the premium, so theirs is low, is one. Second is, the overall premium to the county is low. So, yeah, they're paying a big part of it, but they're paying a big part of a smaller amount than we agree to. And then the third is just claims data. More people, different demographic of people. And so I suspect that the overall cost of the program. So for example, I guess the overall cost of providing health insurance to teachers and county employees to Fluvanna, I think might be less if we were doing it together. The negative impact on county employees would be probably pretty significant in what they would pay more to come in line with what we're doing, or the cost of adding to this, what the county would need to give us, for us to do for our employees what they are doing for theirs. That's my best estimation. And so none of that is me reading tea leaves and saying that after we get this committee together, the answer is gonna be no, we're not gonna do it. Right? I just think it's gonna cost the county a lot of money to do that, or sacrifice a lot of benefit that employees currently have.
Well, the claims are the claims, you're self-insured. You're not paying,
There's no markup on our claims.
Right.
I mean, they
Right.
have across.
you're paying for the claims.
Because the doctor costs X, that's what the man is paying.
I get it. I just hear so many, I mean, I think Mr. Poland has talked about it before. I mean, I have family members who are teachers outside of Fluvanna County that are paying, if it's the $1,100-ish rate that I think I know we've at least discussed it. So if we use that one, they're paying $900 less than that for a family plan as a teacher of 5-10 years. Yet I don't know. I hate to put it this way, I just don't know with what we're looking at right now. Potential teachers from Fluvanna County who aren't here yet, don't listen to this. What's the why to come to Fluvanna County if you're not born and raised here as a teacher? Or staff, just staff in general. What is the why to come to Fluvanna to work for Fluvanna County Public Schools?
Live in the country.
Which I'm all for, but as a 23-year-old who probably don't want to live in the country anyway necessarily, like, why are they coming here? And if they do want to live in the country, go to Goochland. You know what I mean? Like, I hate putting it that way, but like when we're here, we don't, as much as we don't want to look at it as competition, like life's competition, we are competing for that one resource to fill a chair, depending on the seat. And like, you got a lot of options that offer stuff that we don't. And I don't know.
I think my second biggest question is, why do they stay? Like, honestly.
Because they're fantastic people. And I hate that that's the answer, but they're fantastic.
It is a selfless decision to stay in Fluvanna. I've been doing this 6 years and I'm said whatever it is, however many years, and I'm continually baffled why our people stay with us.
And I hate that that's a question we ask, but when you look at
Gotcha.
it's like, that's all the question.
Yeah.
I verified that family $500 deductible is $877, just so we're all on the same.
Is there a difference with a higher or like 1,000? Can't remember. I don't know. Maybe it was
If you're on the high deductible plan, the employee family is $429.
Wasn't there like a high deductible 500 and 1,000 level or something like that?
Yeah.
And if that,
The
the
1,000
higher
is
deductible would be cheaper.
764.
Yeah,
Oh, I could have sworn we were talking about a
It's possible that was the number we were using when we were exploring what to do with increases last year.
last year.
And maybe that was like a theoretical rate sheet, but we looked at a number that was like 1087.
Mhm.
And it was for a family of four, and it was maybe an alternative.
So that's what we
Did
presented
not.
then, was to go to a 1087-ish. Okay.
This is what we have right now.
You said it's, what's that number? Cause I'm all punching in here.
Well, I can upload the rate sheet to the package, just so everybody has it. But
Sure.
it's, the family on the 500 is 877.
And how much
For
would it
the
be with the
employee
increase?
side.
But that,
Well, how much would it be with the 10% increase?
yeah, so, so again, if we did a 3% increase on somebody who makes 55K a year, that net pre-tax is 1650. And then if we add 10% to 877, that's gonna cost $1,000 a year. So the like net impact on somebody making 55K is a $600 pre-tax and all that. And I acknowledge that healthcare comes out pre-tax. So there's some tax implications, but the net is like a $600 increase instead of a 1650 increase.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate with you, and I'm just letting it be said, a custodian starts at 32,000.
Right.
Let's do it.
So if we're looking at 877 for a family plan, a simple go up 10% puts them roughly at 965 a month. My math right on that?
Sorry, what was it again?
If they're 877 a month now, if we,
965, yeah.
yeah, 965. So either way, we're still pushing the better part of $1,000.
Oh,
Now, I will, the issue is on high deductible is you have to have the funding to be able to offset
Yeah.
the out of pocket if you have to do it. But, the fact that we contribute to the HSA for the employees, and, if you're relatively healthy and you know that you're not gonna have a ton of claims, your preventatives are all covered, you don't have to worry about that, and you got that money sitting in your account.
I mean, they're fabulous. If you have sufficient savings, like.
Or a non-reckless
It-
abandoned 6.5-year-old.
It is triple tax protected, right? It's pre-tax, you don't get charged on the interest you make, and it's tax-free when it comes out. All that's great on a high deductible plan. If you're wealthy enough and have enough savings to withstand, catastrophic failure. And so like, those are great, but like, I work in tech and I have a lovely, like I'm well compensated, but I still have a $500 deductible plan because I am risk averse and I do not like catastrophic cash flow things.
Sure.
And like, people making 32,000 or 55,000 aren't gonna be able to withstand, a $10,000 hit. So as much as I love the merits of the high deductible plan, like, I just don't see a huge take rate, and when we do that, we also set people up for kind of life altering snafus. So the answer on a $32,000 custodian who gets a family plan, that they'd be going back $92 a year if we give 3% and we increase the family plan by 10, they're going back $90 on a year, but it's still backwards.
For numbers' sake, and I know we've got a lot going into a potential ask. Is anybody interested in seeing a 5% pass on instead of a 10, so we can at least have a lower pass on to staff? It's gonna be tough. I don't even know.
I mean, it's just gonna take 300K off the thing, right? So we're gonna go from 3.1 down to 2.8. I'm happy to put it in there, but
No, I'm just saying for comparison purposes, if we're fluctuating, I mean, this is gonna be a big
it's
one anyway, but.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to put it, we're not gonna get anywhere close to a real number to work with today. but
Yeah.
Right.
I'm happy to have that stuck in and put 300 below and 300
Yeah.
above. As opposed to zeroing it out, it's still moving in the right direction for me
Yeah.
right now. I mean, to be honest, it also is about like, what is our perspective? And this board has not in the past, and I don't care what anyone says, this board has not articulated true need to the Board of Supervisors pretty much in any year in the past. And so if board members are comfortable articulating true need, which may or may not include driving some of our staff backwards in income based on getting a raise and then taking it away with healthcare, there's a two-step process here, right? We ask for what we need. They tell us, maybe it's a multi-step. They tell us what they can afford and give us a number, and then we go back and retrofit. So to the extent that people are fine with that third step, we could leave the whole 600 in and ask for it. But then when the numbers come back, then this board's gotta go back and retrofit it.
And I don't disagree with that. When I'm looking at a true need. Staff, I love you, whoever's listening. A true need for me, knowing that we have covered the health insurance increases for a period of time now. Would be to try to keep as much of the other stuff as we can, knowing that that still benefits them, doesn't benefit their account at the end of the day, maybe, but. The need would be this org structure and stuff, you know, and so like, I get you, and I hear you and understand you. A need for me would be maybe like, just might be the year for. Sure, you know, I mean, that happens a lot all over the place where your rates go up. I hate to say it, but, and it's awesome we've covered it for so long, but. I feel like if we stay focused on prioritizing the compensation aspect, which is a top priority, yes. It's gonna still make everything else fall second, you know, and I mean, either way, it's not a good.
Yeah, I think this is notable for me in that in previous years, the healthcare piece was something that I just like. Really wasn't willing to budge on, and I don't wanna scare staff, but like. It's no longer the third rail for me, it's in the mix with everything else, because. What are you gonna do when your starting point is -3 million?
A lot of it's how we communicate this.
Yeah, well,
Just, and I mean, and like Ms. Soares' input, like the input's awesome, and I'm not gonna say we need to hear. Every single staff member's like hierarchy of this list, but like at the same time, it's like y'all tell us, you know, I mean, if we go to bat for them and they say. Pay and insurance are the top two, then well, if we are listening, then that should be the top two, but we do have to articulate. The org structure and all these other things that y'all are saying are super important would then fall second to that. And I'm not gonna say that's the best way to go, but like, if you're listening to your people, then you kind of also say, we hear you and we acted on that, and this was the opportunity cost. Build your school system or a potential, hopefully 1 year difference in the health insurance pay. I don't know. It's not a good conversation to have either way, because it doesn't sound great, but.
I'm with you. And hopefully staff are advocating for themselves, and also. I trust that they're also advocating through the lens of the student, but it's our job to figure out kind of what that balance is, like, if we pull, to be honest, if we pull, positions out of our mental health thing here. Not gonna sleep at night. Like, our kids are suffering and they need it, and I don't know how to balance that against, income increases and healthcare increases and all that, but ultimately, we will by the time March rolls around.
you know, also have a problem with, you know, staff making less money.
Oh, I know, like, how do we ask them, and, you know, even if we made it break even where we're given a raise, but then we're taking some back, yeah, we can beat our chest and say it's great for your retirement down the road, but if their numbers stay flat, they're losing buying power because inflation is inevitable. I think we've documented that quite well. And so they're moving backwards. I don't know how we ask staff to move backwards either.
Take a FCPS field trip to Richmond and say the state needs to give us more money so the county doesn't.
I think we're close to that while we're over at 12 o'clock.
So I guess maybe to wrap up from our point of view, unless there's something else you want to look at, we're going to continue to have the dialogue and do the work and monitor what's happening at the state and continue to get feedback from staff and look to bring you an actual draft of a budget. And if there are specific things that you know you want to see in it or know you don't want to see in it, I need that.
Thanks, Dr. Gretz. Anything else?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think in terms of like starting to produce material, because like ultimately this board will need to come to some kind of consensus about what our true need is and whether or not we're willing to bring that down the hill and advocate for it. But I think given where we are now, if you can create the flow charts of org structure as it's currently proposed. If we can start to document increase in need against decrease in staff and find ways, like, we gotta start putting our narrative together. This is like anything you do at work, right? Where you got a bunch of data and you gotta tell the story so you can make business decisions. Ultimately, we're gonna need to do this because you know, our success down the hill doesn't just happen. And I know that there are some who believe in advocacy and some who don't. I am big in making sure I get FaceTime and I'm able to tell them what's going on in our buildings. And so to the extent that we can start to put these things in place and start to add some of the evidence to the budget books, it'll help me in conversations because I'm confident I will have many with every member of the Board of Supers. And for me right now, like, all of this is in play. Other than making sure we do 3%, because there's state money attached to it, like, that's the most sacred thing for me right now. The thing that I expect to be in is at least a 3% increase, and I'm gonna fight hard to keep our mental health services as intact as we can, but I don't know how we do all this.
All right, on the school board
I just
member,
have one super quick question, and it might not even be answerable. Do we know when we may have a number for cafeteria costs, CEP debt? Like, is that something we may have at our meeting in February?
We're gonna have to put a placeholder in
Okay.
there, regardless.
Okay,
We're still hoping that we can come up with some things that'll turn it around.
We just implemented some things that might have.
yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. I was just curious. That way we could try to have like a clear shot.
Yeah, if we could just have a sense of scale, I don't know if we're looking at $100,000 wedge, or if.
That's what my brain was going on
400,000
then, yeah.
that we need to put in there, but when we're looking at 3-1 and 600K worth of insurance and 700 worth of staff, we want to keep this all valuable.
We'll be able to share something much more.
anybody, anything else before we move on to school board member comments?
All good.
All right, well, we'll start with, Dr. Kelly.
I've said plenty today. I know it's gonna be a long road. All these budget seasons have been difficult. They require, to be honest, like, I'm at the Board of Supers every week, to advocate for the schools, to make sure that they know what's going on with us, and to make sure that, no communication is lost, because I think it's important. And as much as I like the night off, I'd be remiss if I'm not doing my best to make sure that the county doesn't have any missing information. I hope that if folks are listening at home, that you see where this budget year is headed. Know that it is markedly different from the past, and that the headwinds from the state are just increasing year over year. And like, this is the worst starting place I've seen for this school division since I've been on for 6 years. I know all of y'all lived through, whether it's this division or others, the 8 and 10 years and more austere times, but this is absolutely brutal, and will have huge impacts on our staff and our students and morale and recruitment and retention and all the things that we ultimately care about, including student outcomes, period. And so whether you're a staff person or you're just an interested citizen listening at home, or a kid in our division, this is the year where I will encourage folks to just speak up, to write your members, whether it's on this board or others, to attend meetings, ask questions, and to see if we can't collectively come up for a vision for our school division and our county that is progressive, and that it continues to take the needs of our students and our staff seriously. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Rittenhouse.
Yeah, I hear all the numbers that are being presented, and I like numbers. I went back to some of my papers. This, superintendent's budget for 2020. And the budget that year was $42 million, $697,633. Well, we're in excess of $12 million difference now, 5 years later. What are the students getting for it? What are the teachers getting for it? We have less students and more employees. I don't see
had that work tape, it doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just what I think.
Thanks, Mr. Rittenhouse. Mr. Reed?
Thank you all for putting all this information together, because I know it's a lot and gives us a good foundation to build off of. I'll echo what Dr. Kelly said, but I'll add in there the staff component too. I love y'all, but if I'm being real and honest, I know you guys don't always speak up. So whoever's listening, please feel free to speak up to us, to the county, to school admins. Like we really need to know where y'all are at. And the block parties are awesome. I love them, but like, y'all can come to us too and let us know, because that's what we need. And I think that might help qualify some of, like what Mr. Rittenhouse is saying too, like the better we understand what y'all are working with in the schools, the better we can advocate for it. And we only know so much because we're not in building staff every single day too. And so, yeah, I would love to see, I said this earlier too, I would just love to see county and school roadmap plans, knowing we are as big of a cog in the wheel as what we are for the county. And I think that would help us a lot moving forwards, but we'll get it done.
Thanks, Mr. Reed. Yeah, I think that, we got a lot of work ahead, and I'm confident that we will get a budget together that will support the needs of our students. That's the end goal. All right, on to the adjournment of the meeting. Take a motion.
So,
All right, thanks, Dr. Kelly. Do I have a second?
yeah, I'll second.
Thanks, Mr. Reed. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes, indeed. Lunch.